Maybe enough. How about you?
Good. Yeah.
Ready to get through this meeting?
Thank you very much. Usually on one, a big crystal ball drops down here into the council room, but it's out of commission, so we're not going to do the crystal ball tonight. But any rate, welcome everyone. This is a work session for the Basalt Town Council. This is on green initiatives, and it is Tuesday, August 24th, and we're happy to see all the smiling faces out there. And don't know who we want to start with. We'll do a roll call.
We're going to start, we're going to start with Sarah, but Pam's going to do a roll call.
Yeah, let's do a roll call. And then
Roll call. Okay, absolutely. Okay, let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Here.
Bill Infante. Glenn Drummond.
Here.
David Knight.
Here.
Elise Hoddle.
Present.
Ryan Slack.
Here.
And Bill Kane.
here, thank you.
A team's present, sir.
Okay, so it looks like we got core teed up. This is all.
Yes,
looks like
we have a
exciting
lot of
stuff here.
people teed up tonight. And so Sarah's going to give an overview of what we're going to do and an introduction of everyone that's here. And just a reminder, it's a work session, and we've scheduled about 45 minutes for the work session. So we'll be adjourning at a quarter till.
Yeah.
And a lot of the information that you're getting is kind of introductions, and that will be circling back, have another presentation on core, on some of the findings, et cetera. So are you ready, Sarah?
We are ready, thank you. Thank you, Council, for this opportunity to update you on the town's green initiatives that the Green Team and members and supporters have been working on. I do want to introduce a number of people, and we do have a few things to get through rapidly this evening. So you'll be hearing 4 short presentations, one from CORE. We'll also be hearing from Jeff Dickinson and Amanda Poindexter about beneficial electrification and putting Basalt on the path to net zero. We'll hear from Catherine Kristoff regarding some of the town's resiliency actions and support. And we'll also be hearing from Kathy Hall and Tyler Carvel of Picken County Solid Waste Center, who will outline the program for Picken County's construction and demolition waste ordinance and kind of gauge some interest as to where if Basalt would be interested in moving in that direction. So just to introduce everyone here tonight, we have 5 firemen from CORE. Jeff Dickinson is here from Biospace Inc. and Amanda Poindexter, Full Circle Construction. We also have here from Holy Cross Energy, thank you, Mike Steiner and Mary Wiener. we have Mona Newton here as well from CORE, and back here we do have Kathy Hall and Tyler Colabell from Pitkin County. And so I'm gonna start with.
And Sarah, just before you start, one person
you're
we.
gonna tell me, yes.
Yes, one person we haven't introduced is, we were fortunate to hire Mitch Miller as our building official, and he's kind of an important part of our whole sustainability team, and so this is really kind of his first time meeting with the Basalt Town Council. You want to just stand up.
Be gentle. Thank you.
So,
Great.
okay,
Welcome, Mitch.
Sarah.
Right, thank you. I will pass this over to Fi and just kind of give me the heads up when you want me to move. Switch slides.
Thank you guys so much for letting us kind of give you a little overview of CORE. I know all of you are very familiar with us. In your packets is a full description.
Oh, Fi, closer to the mic, sorry.
Sure. Is this better? Is that better? A little closer? How's that?
Yeah, it's fine for us. It's the TV
It's for the
guys.
TV.
You know, we can hear you.
Are we good? Yep. Okay, great. I don't know if I need to start again, but
There we go.
okay, great. Since we're on a very tight time frame, we have a lot of people presenting tonight. I didn't want to go into all of our services, so if you are interested in more detail, there is in the memo in your packet is kind of a very long list of all the different things that CORE provides to Basalt and to the community. But I'm just going to do a kind of a quick overview of the strategies, sort of our approach to helping you with your climate action goals. All right. So kind of our first step is really innovation and inspiration. CORE really leads with supporting innovative projects that that are proof of concept, as well as projects we can hold up that get people excited. It shows them that this can be done and makes people want to do it themselves. So we provide technical assistance, funding, and really leadership. And so I think some great projects that you're all very familiar with are Basalt Vista, where I think it was CORE who said, hey, let's not run a gas line to that project. Another really exciting project we have going right now is the Coal Mine Basin that we've kind of brought really to the forefront right now. That will, if it goes forward, it'll save, I think, 1.5 times as much carbon as Pitkin County emits individually. So it's a pretty impactful project. Right. And then once we have these great projects, we need to get the word out about them. So another aspect of our strategy is education and outreach, and we have a great education and outreach team and do everything from our events, radio ads, newspaper ads, tabling. We've been at the Basalt Farmers Market recently, the Willits Music Nights, and then just a lot of various campaigns and events and things to get the community engaged. And once they're engaged, we want them to take action. So we have what we call our Path to Zero programs, and it's kind of a unique approach. It's assessments, advising, and incentives, but it's not just like a one-off rebate like a lot of programs. It is, we want to get you to see what your path is to make progress. So both residential and commercial, you meet with an advisor and they say, here's the right action for you to take next, and then here's your path going forward, so people can really engage with their own path to zero and bringing their buildings closer to net zero. And then collaboration, I think we all know we cannot do this alone, and CORE both has created some collaborations, Upper Valley Climate Action Collaborative, as well as a mountain beneficial electrification group. We also partner with ICLEI and bring their resources to the town. So we're just trying to find all the different ways that we can work together to move more quickly and accelerate all of our progress. And lastly, really, the leaders are you and your staff. So supporting you and what your initiatives are is a key component of our strategy. And some kind of bigger initiatives that we've been working on to support you recently is we've got your greenhouse gas inventory that both for the town of Basalt, as well as we're doing a regional inventory this year so we can see kind of the big picture throughout the Upper Valley. And then the next is building code support, which Jeff Dickinson has been working with the town of Basalt and CORE to support you in putting more aggressive energy efficiency requirements into your codes to meet your goals. And he's been working very closely with us this year. We're doing what we're calling a CORE platform for the whole Upper Valley, which is just really here is the path to get to net zero by 2030, as well as, all the different components that we should be looking at in our building codes. And then he's been working directly with Basalt to customize that and really meet your needs. And so I'm going to turn it over to them to talk about that. And thank you for your time.
I'm in the safe zone.
James and I need to help here, Lori. Just here.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this one.
Go down to your tab. That one, right. Yep, right there. Now share, go back.
Great, thanks, Vi, and thanks, everyone. Like Vi said, my name is Jeff Dickinson. I'm with Biospaces Energy Consulting, and I've been working with CORE since CORE's inception, and around 2000, and working on these energy codes and green codes in the valley and in western Colorado. So I'm pretty familiar with what's going on and seeing things change pretty rapidly over the years. So I'll get into it. Sarah? So basically, you all know you've declared a climate emergency, or Basalt's aware of what's happening with the climate. I mean, the climate's changing, and we need to do something now. And it's pretty close to home here with the Lake Christine fire, and we're really nervous about what might happen if something like that happens. So again, we're thinking about one of the things is resiliency and being self-sufficient. So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about. There's reducing carbon emissions, but then there's also resiliency. So that'll be really part of this. So the community climate goals, 2017 you adopted a climate action plan, and that was to reduce the carbon emissions 25% by 2025. Well, that's coming up in 4 years, right? So a lot of these dates that we've put always seem like they were way out in the future, like 2030, 2050, we'll never get there. But anyway. So in 2019, it was like, we're getting really close. So that was the declaration of that climate emergency. And then in 2020, Eagle County adopted a climate action plan that became a little more aggressive. So that was to reduce carbon emissions 50% by 2030. So that's the one that's coming up in 9 years. And, this is really that action plan for the next 9 years is what we're going to be talking about. In your packet, you had basically this pretty big table that talked about all the strategies we've been thinking about. As Vi mentioned, that's what we're looking at in the whole valley. Carbondale Town Council really approved that, and we're moving toward ordinance with that of something very similar. So now we're here in Basalt, and we'll be working our way up valley, basically. So the basic tenets of this climate-based energy code amendments process that we're looking at. So net zero construction, trying to eliminate as soon as we can carbon emissions from new construction. There's construction emission, during construction, the embodied energy of the materials are something we'll want to be talking about, but then there's also the emissions from the furnaces and boilers and those kinds of things. So we're talking about mandatory renewable requirements, beneficial electrification, so I'll get into that a little bit. Again, elimination of natural gas in buildings, and then updating the sustainable building regulations, or the SBRs. We have them both for residential and commercial in Basalt. We call those SBR 1 and SBR 2, Reg 2. So, and then resiliency was the last one, and that's going to talk a little bit about battery storage and battery backups, so that if the grid does go down, you've got some days to catch your breath and stay warm. How do we define net zero? There's a lot of different definitions of that. It's basically, simply a building that produces as much energy as it uses. So it's not tapped into the grid, and then it can produce that basically on site. We're also working with Holy Cross closely, because Holy Cross is our main electric provider, and they're moving their grid toward as close to net zero as they can. Renewables, getting as many renewables as possible in there. So that's part of the way we're doing this calculus. So there's renewable requirements. Right now, basically, Basalt has there are no mandatory requirements for renewables. And what we're looking at, and you'll see, and you probably saw in your packet, is basically a stair-step approach to get to 100%. But what we're basically proposing for 2021 is 15 to 25% of the building's energy consumption in renewables. And we're looking at increasing those requirements every 3 years to meet those climate goals. We've looked at a lot of things like how much solar. I mean, solar's the main renewable here. We have great sun, as everybody knows. You know, wind is great in eastern Colorado and plains and that sort of thing, but it's really PV and some hydro. You know, we have Rudai, but I think Aspen gets the bulk of that hydro. So we've looked at those options, so the physical space limitations, what are the off-site options, solar farms, and then, again, as I said, greening the grid, we're looking at taking that into account as well. And we've spent a lot of time working with basically focus groups, different environmental boards or green teams through the valley. We've worked with, of course, Rocky Mountain Institute and Colorado Energy Office, and looked at what's happening in Denver, City of Denver, and the County of Denver. So a lot of places are doing this kind of work. So we're able to take advantage of all this great work that's being done by these, big groups. So beneficial electrification, it's basically steps toward weaning ourselves off natural gas and moving toward more electric. So that's going to be basically heat pumps are the strong way to go. They've developed these cold climate heat pumps in the last few years, so we're able to take advantage of those. And those technologies are really developing pretty rapidly. So we're looking at requiring renewables, and being electric ready is a big part of it. So getting ready, even though we're not talking about telling everybody they can't use gas now, but hey, if you're going to use gas, you need to provide, a panel that's oversized and wiring and that sort of thing to be able to do that. Not only for your heating system, but also for your electric vehicles and your battery storage. So we want to include that in any regulations. This just gives this is the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, has done a lot of this research and work, and they kind of have this stair-step approach going from just incentives all the way to just electric only. And we've kind of picked and chosen from this list items that make sense for Basalt and the Valley. So essentially what we're proposing is everybody needs to be electric ready, and that's that pre-wiring for future electric and for batteries and electric vehicles. We're discouraging natural gas for space heating and water heating. We're not proposing eliminating it at this point, but we're saying, hey, if you're going to do it, you've got to have additional renewables or pay a fee, perhaps. We're definitely looking at allowing natural gas for cooking and process loads. Process loads are things that are used for, like a restaurant, the big stoves in restaurants or small, like industrial uses. So now I'll get into this. There's a lot of detail in these charts, and feel free to ask any questions, but it's basically, the overview is, these are the steps. It's kind of an every 3-year step, and that's basically we're following the International Code Council, and they release new building codes every 3 years. So 2021, 24, 27, 30. These don't quite match that because it usually takes a year to get it in place and adopted. So that's basically what we've done. But in 2021, what we've discussed is not necessarily adopting a new code, but adopting a list of amendments potentially that would help meet those climate goals right away, rather than go through the whole code adoption process. I'm sure Mitch wants to dive right into a whole new code adoption process. The first month he starts here, so we understand that, and that's an issue with most of the building departments in the valley, that it takes a lot of energy and a lot of resources to adopt these new codes. We've been working with Sean Mozingo with Colorado Code Consulting, so there's a lot of support for that, but still it's going to be a lot of work. So we're proposing basically amendments to the current SBRs that would then get you to those goals. This talks about commercial, so the renewables portion, again, the column on your left is about where we are now, very little bit for commercial and none for electrification, but ramping up that 25% number every 3 years till you get to 100% renewables by 2031. And we have a lot of idiosyncrasies and a lot of ways to meet those goals without having to get that. It's basically an incentive program. Say if you're LEED Gold, for example, you don't have to have as much as many renewables. Commercial electrification, so nothing in the code right now, but trying to, again, ramp that up as we go along every 3 years and get to a point of ultimately no gas allowed by 2030, 2031. So then on to the single family, so single family residential, so we're looking at HERS, which is Home Energy Rating System, so that's a way to rate homes and give a score based on how they relate to the current code. So now there isn't a requirement. Basically, it's a little, I'll say wonky, if that's a legal word to use in the council meetings. You know, 54 is a code, is meeting the energy code, but is it Amanda? It's the 2015.
2015,
If you met the energy code, you'd score a 54. So we're looking at bringing that number down. The closer you get to 0, the closer you are to net 0. So that's basically what we're doing. And ERI is
Energy Rating Index.
thanks, Energy Rating Index, which is by the Code Council, and we're looking at maybe switching over to that. So don't have the final answer on that one, but that's basically what we're pursuing. Renewables for residential, no renewables required at this point, but again, following that same path with exceptions as we get up to that 2030 to get to 100%. And that 100% would be a combination of 25% on-site, and then the grid would provide the rest, and that would most likely be get you to 100%. Residential electrification, nothing now, but creating these incentives to get us there and moving again toward a path. And the reason for the stair-step approach is we don't want to throw anything at builders or developers or designers right away. We want to say, hey, this is coming. So this, you know, people like this approach so they can see where we're headed, right? So we're going to say, now we're going to kind of get you in there, and then you've got to know that by 2030 it's going to be more restrictive and more efficient. And then just a couple other things, you know, how does the town participate? And I know there's been studies, and the green wish list of impacts and what you can spend money to make the town more renewable on its own. But, you know, that's just some random numbers thrown out there trying to retrofit a certain amount of the buildings to meet that 2030 goal. And then existing buildings. Existing buildings are a lot tougher because you don't have the sort of legislative or the way to, they don't have to come to you, right? So if you're applying for a building permit, you're going through a process so the town has the opportunity to require something. But if you're just a homeowner or have an existing building that's been there 10 or 20 years, there's no opportunity. So that's something that CORE is really working on, trying to develop a kind of a mechanism to trigger that. There's benchmarking, like how much money does how much energy does a commercial building use now, and how much do you want it to reduce its energy use each year through efficiency measures or renewables. So there's a number of ways, and a lot of places have worked on that. And then just another sort of the wish list of other areas we're looking at. Addressing exterior energy use. There are things about snow melt in the code now, but you know, a lot of radiant heaters outside. A lot of this is commercial. Heat tape, things like that. Really getting into the battery storage and seeing what the requirements are. My personal feeling is professional feeling is it's a little early to require the batteries at this point, but we've had a lot of discussions with Holy Cross to really develop that. And I think in the next few years we'll really understand what the batteries are all about, what makes sense to require. There's opportunities for amending the zoning setbacks to allow batteries or PV in there. Maybe the zoning code would allow for a sole smart designation. And maybe the grant program could, if we want people to move to electric, there could be grants available. And we've talked quite a bit about that. There's a lot behind all this, as you can imagine. We're just really giving you the overview. This is really your first chance to see it from all the work the Green Team and staff has been working on in CORE. So These are just, again, those issues, those things that I talked about in the beginning. These are kind of the areas we're looking at to address and help you meet your climate goals.
Yes.
And,
Questions? So it looks like the big thing out there for us is going to be to find a way to efficiently switch out from, I mean, it's one thing to regulate new construction relative to fossil fuel emissions and natural gas dependency. How do we go about switching out from existing, you know, we've got a majority of, you know, they're gas-fired boilers, and the question I would have is that if you have a community with lots of heating systems, HVAC systems that are hydronic, you know, they either radiant or high-temperature baseboard, are there efficient electric boilers that can you switch out, you know, a gas-fired boiler for some kind of electric boiler, or are we talking about an entire new sort of thin heater-based, you know, board, classic old 1960s, you know, baseboard electric heat, you know, or?
yeah, it's heat pumps are really the way to go.
Oh, okay, got it,
It's
okay.
a water heat pump, so instead
Got
of
it,
an
okay.
air heat pump, that's the most common.
That answers it,
Yeah, and then the water system.
okay.
And what we've been talking about is a grant program, and that might come in on, you might remember that the master plan and the climate action master plan are asking the town to commit to $100,000 a year. And so we were thinking that grant program might be the way. There's complications of making that part of the bond program, so we thought it was more suitable for that. So, you know, we've only started to kick that around and how it would look. We thought actually honestly that a grant program would be easier for the town to administer than a loan program. There is this new rural program, but the mechanics of doing it are just too daunting for
Yeah.
us.
I mean,
And
the
so-
quick answer is it's heat pumps with
Yeah. Right.
forced air ducting.
Yeah. And you plan for obsolescence too.
It's tough, but I've had this conversation
Ductless.
with Core.
Oh,
What
okay.
he's trying to do, it's gonna be difficult, because I asked Core how to do it to my house that has a 33-year-old boiler, so I don't wanna get
Yeah.
Okay,
mired in the weeds.
We won't get, yeah, we gotta keep, we got limited time
Yeah.
tonight, but
That's-
you know,
we could
that's
talk
a.
about that all night.
But and it's planning for these things as rooftop
So
units
Ryan
fail.
Slack says he's got all the answers here, so we'll,
Oh, good, all right.
okay.
And, you know, I was just wondering, in the interest of time, because we have one group of people that's harder for them maybe to come back, maybe instead of moving to Amanda next, we go to Kathy Hall and her group, just because they're from Picken County and they're not as, they're not necessarily part of our intimate team. So Kathy, do you want to,
They'll probably come here, and I'm just going to look for their presentation. Sorry. Yeah, but I thought we had this. I didn't think that one was loaded yet, sorry.
Amanda, do you want to just switch with Kathy or, yeah, one of you come up and stand and one sit maybe?
So
Does
we'll
that work?
just, maybe grab it and.
Yep.
Welcome.
Hi, waiting for our presentation to come up. But I'll introduce myself. I'm Kathy Hall. I'm the Solid Waste Director for Pitkin County.
I'm Tyler Carvel. I'm Projects and Compliance Manager for the landfill.
Yeah, so we're here to talk tonight about construction and demolition debris diversion. So, started about 2 years ago. We have a real construction and demo problem in Pitkin County at the landfill. We'll go into a little bit more detail. But about 54%, 53% of the waste going into the Pitkin County landfill is construction and demolition debris. National average is 20%. So we tear down a lot of places, homes, buildings, offices here in the county. And in the valley, we get waste from Carbondale up usually. So about 2 years ago, we started the process of developing a construction demolition debris diversion ordinance. So that went into effect. The Board of County Commissioners voted it in April of last year. And we hired Michael Port, who couldn't be here tonight, and he got the program fully implemented. It was a partnership with our community development group when they redid the energy code, so they worked us into it. So we have a pretty tight partnership with them because of the permits and everything. We have to coordinate very closely with them. So again, in October last year, it went into effect fully. Construction demo remodel projects within unincorporated Pitkin County that require a permit. There's a refundable diversion compliance deposit that we collect at the time of permit issuance, and Tyler will go into a little bit more detail on that. We require 25% separation of recoverable materials from that trash. So that's part of the ordinance. We thought we'd start with 25%. It's a very attainable goal. We'll go into kind of, we divert a lot of materials already at the Pitkin County landfill. So 25% is very easily achievable if you're doing a construction demo project. We do require waste tracking and a diversion report at the end of the project, and we'll tell you how we do that in a little bit through some software we purchased. And then a tiered pricing structure for C&D loads.
So this is the 3 options after we've gone through the permit process. So once we had the permit in hand and we're approaching the end of the project, we'll look at how the contractor's doing, and they fall into one of these 3 categories. So a full refund would be the 25% that Kathy mentioned, and then 100% of recoverable materials, which are listed on the side. And all those recoverable materials are there because we have diversion programs at the landfill for each one of those categories. You can get a partial refund if you do at least 25% of debris by weight. And then we have a way to view trucks as they come in, and we have a lot of mixed loads. So some of these recoverable materials are coming in roll-offs. And if you have some of those mixed loads, you'll get bumped down into the 50% deposit. And then if you have less than 20%, there's no refund. This is the software that we purchased to run the program. This is Green Halos. So Green Halos really helps us track everything, and has really let us do this with one person, even though we do have quite a bit of permits in the county. What you see in front of you is kind of the main page you'll get, and anybody in the county or any outside the county can go in and look at this and see how projects in the county are doing with their diversion, what kind of materials are being recycled for the most part, and then how that kind of impacts our carbon footprint.
So we implemented a tier pricing structure. So we only have control through the permit system through unincorporated Pitkin County. But anybody bringing waste into us, aspen, snowmass, basalt, is subject to this tiered pricing system. So if you have a fully sorted load, 0 to 30 ton, you pay the base rate of $93.75 a ton to tip at the landfill to bury it. If your load comes in with more than 10% of divertible materials from that list Tyler went over earlier, you get charged a $60 kind of penalty fee. And we call that an unsorted load. That's tier 4. So that comes in at $153.75 a ton. And most loads are unsorted. You know, we're in a unique community. There's a lot of money, and they want their buildings and everything done quickly. So this is what we're looking at. So in 2019, we're not looking at 2020 because that was sort of a weird year, as we all know. But we brought in 30,700 tons of construction demolition debris. Right now, we're seeing a 6% growth over 2019. So permits have jumped up, I think, almost 60, 70%. So as we all know, people moved here, they stayed, they bought places, they're demoing, they're remodeling, they're doing a lot of work. Right now, 65%, as I mentioned, are unsorted loads coming in. They're paying that extra $60 a ton deposit, or that extra fee. And it doesn't seem to be phasing people. So with the budget cycle, we're going to look at maybe bumping that up a little bit. Right now, our C&D diversion program rate through the unincorporated Pitkin County, the Green Halo tracking, we're at 51% diversion. So once we implemented this program, it's working. It's a $1,000 deposit per estimated ton of waste. So some of these projects, there's $30,000, $60,000, $70,000 deposits going in. So if you have to divert that 25%, if you want your your money back. So people are getting it. I think it's working. Now it's only a few months into it, but it's working. Right now we are holding $726,000 in deposits. So hopefully we can give all the deposit back. Everybody met their 25% goal. We'll see. So.
And these are just a couple of graphs showing the growth of projects in the county. And I'm sure it's similar for you guys in Basalt, but I mean, everything is going up, and these numbers are from earlier in the summer, but I think now we're well into the 60% over 2019. So future plans for this, I know we are collecting that unsorted load fee, and we don't hope, but we expect that we're gonna keep some of those permit fees as well. So what are we gonna do with the money? Next year, we're looking at building a new materials reuse facility, and that's kind of an extension to our drop and swap if you've been up there, and we're kind of limited in the materials that we can take just because it's outside and it's uncovered. This will be an indoor facility, kind of think like a habitat kind of thing, and it'll just allow us to take more stuff and keep more items out of the landfill. There's another thought that we might up the minimum diversion. We don't have a lot of projects that have finished through the whole program yet, but as we get that data in and we see how many permits we're keeping, we might raise that if people are doing really well, and we can, if everyone's doing 50%, there's no reason that everyone else can't do that as well. And then if we really have trouble getting this off the ground and getting people to divert, we'll look at putting in a diversion facility in, which is a lot of money and it's years in the future, but it is possible, and we would have to do on-site sorting and processing of all C&D materials.
So what we're here tonight for is we met a few weeks ago with a stakeholder meeting. It included Sarah, people from Aspen, Snowmass Village, regional collaboration. This program will really work if we can get our neighboring communities to buy into and develop some similar type of ordinance. And that is, we're looking for direction tonight to kind of encourage, we want to continue working with staff to develop this program. And we can also offer assistance, Picken County, because we've already developed how to do this, the Green Halo software. We can help you get that started as well through an IGA or some type of other agreement. So that's what we're here. It's informational tonight, and we'd love to continue working to get this program going up and down the valley.
Fantastic.
Awesome, thank you.
So it was fast, I know, we were trying to.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
So are you guys good with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, so
Yeah.
you guys got what you wanted.
All
Everybody got a
right,
thumbs
awesome.
up.
Thank
Okay, you bet. So with our remaining 6 minutes, Amanda? Yep.
All right.
Go to you and we'll get Catherine in there too.
Perfect. I will be super quick. My name's Amanda Poindexter. I help the town run the sustainable building regulations, and I also do a lot of the building inspections. So I'll be probably enforcing and implementing a lot of the items that we're talking about. And I just had a quick thing that I wanted to speak on for the SBRs, and mostly, we're gonna clean up, basically the type 1 for the most part, and just, there's things I wanna implement in there, such as like a blower door benchmarking when we do remodels. We also should eliminate global warming potential, blowing agents that are used in foam. So just, it's okay to use spray foam, but some of these are not very environmentally friendly. And cleaning up our REMP language, as well as talking about a gray water ordinance, similar to what Picken County has, and just cleaning up a lot of the language that's in the regulations for right now, just to make it easier to understand and comply and to check for compliance. So, thank you.
Good effort. Thank you.
Thanks. And I'm Catherine Kristoff, the town engineer. I was just going to talk briefly about some of the things that we're doing from the town's perspective with our infrastructure. We've been working closely with Holy Cross Energy and the Green Team about making sure that the town is electric ready as far as any of our projects that are coming on board, and just being as forward thinking as possible. around any of the capital improvement projects that we might be doing. Recently, we did receive a grant for 2 new electrical vehicle chargers. That one will be on Two Rivers Road, the other will be right near the other quick charger near the art base. We've also been working with some students at the high school about potentially getting some EV chargers out there. I think it would be really neat to be able to work with some students on getting those and getting some buy-in from the school district there. We've also begun meeting with the school administration about potentially partnering with them on a larger solar project over there. And then in partnership with some of those solar projects, we're also looking at battery storage. It's a good opportunity to not just offset our carbon footprint and greenhouse gases, but also create a system that would make the town and some of our critical infrastructure more resilient through adding battery storage, so that some of our critical infrastructure could be available should we see some type of emergency, and pairing that with the solar offset. So those are some of the projects we're working on just within our town infrastructure itself.
Great. Thank you. Is that
That's it. That's our presentation.
Well, that's pretty compact, I don't dare count, I just want to make one comment, then I'd like council to ask questions, but you should know later on in the agenda for this evening, we're going to be authorizing ballot language to secure long-term financing and three critical infrastructure projects for the town. But green initiatives is one of them. So we've got a 0.5 megawatt solar kind of project in mind. So I know that came from Green Team, the ideas for that. So we're deadly serious about it, and hopefully we'll get it past the voters in November. Don't use deadly? No, okay. So, at any rate, thank you. Questions from council about?
I just want to thank you. Really, truly, I think we just need to pepper these in as we move forward, because this is a great way for the public to get some knowledge about this stuff too, because there's so much out there. And, I'm on council, so I was able to see what CORE does and all this stuff. But we got to figure out better ways to get people to realize what they can do. And I know CORE's trying and Holy Cross is going for it. It's just everybody trying to work together on a massive education campaign, because I see so many incentives and I see so many ways to move us to more of an electrical future. And sometimes people feel a little overwhelmed about it. When I talk to them about it, I'm like, you got a 33-year-old boiler, you got to deal with it, you got to do something. And it's just finding ways to get that information out there. And I do appreciate CORE to be able to talk about this with people, but I think some people are still kind of mystified by the whole thing.
A lot of people, I think, are so mystified. It's one of the many things we're looking at how we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you all for presenting, and I'd also like to say thank you for going beyond energy to think about waste in terms of green initiatives. We also should be thinking about water as well. I would love to invite Holy Cross to come and talk to us about the latest and greatest technology that's out there in the electrical world. A lot of us don't understand that or understand, for example, like how realistic is battery storage for residential or small commercial, that sort of thing. And with regard to like building codes and all that, I have a ton of questions. So I would love to have the opportunity to meet with you guys in, smaller context to learn more. And also to Gary's point, for the public to hear it as well. Thank you.
I just want to say thanks too, and I loved seeing the roadmap, the net zero development. I'm a project manager at heart, so that's just was super cool, and I look forward to marching to that roadmap.
Well, thank you guys. Great.
Thank you.
We'll do this again.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, so we will adjourn for 15 minutes and then come on back for our regular council meeting. Post
We're on.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, August 24, 2021, Town Council meeting of the Town of Basalt. And we will begin our meeting tonight with we did this once before, but I think we need to call the roll again for our regular meeting. So Pam, if you'd be so kind.
Yes, I will be happy to do that. Here we go. Okay, let's begin with Glenn Drummond.
Here.
Thank you. Elise Huddle.
Present?
Thank you. David Knight.
Here.
Thank you. Ryan Slack.
Here.
Thank you. Gary Tenenbaum.
Here.
Thank you. Bill Kane.
Here.
And Bill Infante is in flight,
All
not
right.
here.
Well, thank you. First order of business for tonight is to review and approve the consent agenda. Consists of 2 items, minutes from August 10, 2021, and an extension of P&Z appointments that were provided to council on a summary sheet. So hopefully you got a chance to look at that. So if there are no objections or no one desires to take anything off the consent, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
All right, been moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We can do this with a voice vote. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Consent agenda is approved. So now we come to public comment. So at this point in our meeting, we invite members of the public to address council. There are a few ground rules that are important to note. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and address your comments directly to the mayor. That's me.
And it's
Identify yourself by name and address, and comments should be courteous, civil, constructive, and we will make no decision tonight, as you know, but we love to hear from the public and love to hear what's on people's minds.
You do the exception.
Pardon me?
Like, public comment other than anything that's already on the agenda.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, please limit your comments to items that are not scheduled on our council agenda tonight. So if you're here for the, for BCC, we're talking about that later.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll be later.
We'll take those later.
Okay.
6:30.
We'll be getting to it pretty soon,
Yeah, pretty quick.
so.
That's agenda 7A on your agenda. It's currently scheduled for 6:30, and agenda times are always a little flux.
And then is there time to speak after that today, or?
Yes, yeah.
We'll get there as quickly as we can, thanks. So, any
Yeah, no-
call-ins, any?
So far, we don't have any call-ins, but just a reminder that the agenda, first page of the agenda packet has the access instructions, and the easiest way, if you want to access the meeting online, is to hit the Zoom link, or you can dial, and Caesar has this up on the screen, 1-346-248-7799, and the webinar ID is 899-2469-0191. And if you have problems, you can also just text me at 970-379-1514. And so far, I haven't had any indication except from Caesar, so we don't have anybody by text, and Pam, you didn't have anybody lined up. And obviously, we have people in the audience who want to speak on the public hearing item.
Okay. Well, hearing no comments, then I would turn the meeting to mayor and council reports and comments. So the floor is open for anyone from council that would like to provide a report or update extracurricular activities.
I'm camping.
Oh, glamping. I'll just say a couple things. One is, I don't know if this has been widely circulated, but at our last board meeting at RAFTA, we did approve a resolution and amendment to amend the fare schedule to provide $1 fares for people through age 18, up to 19, to try to capture high school. And so, and the the agency will come out with efficient ways to be able to do this payment on one card, so it's kind of a big deal. So if you're, I think especially for Saturday mornings, Aspen Valley Ski Club going up Valley, try to get cars off the road, this is a $1 fare for kids. So hopefully that will be successful and will be well liked.
Well, the question I have is, how do you do that? Because, like, the kids are gonna have a special pass?
Yeah,
So you can
we're gonna
get-
have to work that out, but
Okay.
there'll be something
So I have
for
one of
it.
those kids
Or it
that
can go
likes
on
these
one
wrapped up.
card, or there's a value card, or just,
Okay.
it'll be worked out, so,
No one's gonna believe that you're 18 though, Gary, sorry.
yeah. Yeah, they don't have to carry
You don't realize I dye my hair every once in a while.
currency, so that's a big deal. Just observation, the Sunday market, Susan, is just crazy good. I mean, it's just amazingly popular this year, and hopefully all the vendors are doing well and are happy, and we'll be back again next year. It's really been great, so congratulations to everybody that's,
Yeah, and if you're watching this on TV, come on down between 10 and 2.
yeah, really great stuff. So that's all I wanted to comment on. No more, if there's comments from council, we'll hear from the manager. Our city manager will provide a report.
So I just have one thing to update the council on. So I did have a Zoom call with Congresswoman Boebert last 2 Fridays ago. Their office had reached out to me and asked if I was available on a Friday afternoon for a Zoom call. So I took the call and had expressed to her some of the topics that were brought up by this council when we first requested a meeting with her back in the winter. Talked a little bit about water on the western slope, funding for infrastructure and maintenance of infrastructure, renewable energy, jobs, and housing. Those were sort of the ones that I cited. And so, it was a fairly brief conversation, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, but I did get a little feedback from the Congresswoman with regard to some of the things that she's currently supporting. One of those was the Western Water Security Act. Of course, at that time, the Glenwood Canyon was still closed, and she had just done a visit in the region, and so was supporting some resources for rebuilding that area, possibly looking at other routes, and so that was still in the works at the time. The infrastructure bill that had recently gone through was not something that she had supported. Instead, supporting there was $650 billion remaining in unspent COVID funds that she thought could be put to use toward those. And then another was keeping the BLM office in Grand Junction, was one that she had supported, and the SHRED Act as well, which keeps some of the revenues from the ski industry that are generated on certain forests in the community, and then talked a little bit about some of the PILT payments and trying to get some greater share of those federal funds for rural counties. So that's just a few highlights. At the end of the conversation, I did invite the Congresswoman to come and speak with the entire council, and just assured her that it would be a productive conversation. And so she said she would take that into consideration when she's back around these parts. So
Great.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'll leave it at that for now, Mayor.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Well, with that, then, our next order of business is item number 6 on the agenda. It's under presentations. Christie's going to provide an update on second quarter financial results.
You're fine. Thank you, Mayor. It's pretty much the same format that we've been using in the past, and we've got some fairly good news year to date. So when you look at the general fund expenses and year-to-date revenue by source, it's pretty much paints the picture on revenue that you would anticipate about 54. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. And you can't quite see that number on the blue on the left part of that graph, but it's roughly 55% of that is sales tax, and then we've got about 21% of it property tax, which is a bit high, just because we receive our tax revenue in the first half of the year. So that's fairly normal. We've actually received in year-to-date about 97% of our tax revenue. So that's tracking very well. And then the remainder is for everything else on our revenues, licenses and permits at 14%. We're still pretty solid on our building permits. And some other small fees are the remainder. If you look at the general fund expenses year-to-date graph, there's a 49.8% in the blue, which really indicates for public works. That is a lot higher than you would anticipate, but remember we had $1,475,000 we paid for the land and the new public works facility for the first half of the year, so that kind of skews those numbers a little bit. That'll start to come down as we move forward into the year. So then if you go to the next page, which is the numbers page, it's my favorite one. I love the numbers. The first thing I always point out on general fund page is the sales tax number at 51.6% received year to date. The one thing I'm going to note is that the budget that is noted in this quarterly financial report includes the ordinance that's going to be potentially approved tonight, just to show you guys the implications of that and what that'll look like, so that everything that has been approved is included in there in this report. So we're tracking right where we would anticipate, a little better than actually we would anticipate on our sales tax, given all the expenditures we've added this year as well. We are doing pretty good on our building permit side, under licenses and permits at 96% received. That doesn't mean that we're gonna get another 600,000 through the remainder of the year, I wanna point out though, because we got some big licenses and permits in the first half of the year. So we're gonna be ahead of budget on that, but not substantially, to my knowledge at this point. But building permits are pretty hot, given the real estate market right now. Let's see if there's anything else I wanna point out really quick. I guess on the negative side is interest earnings under other, in the first column on the left, is at an actual of $3,128 for the year. We budgeted $46,000. If you look over to the right, there's a box over to the right there. It looks like this, and it's on your screen there. Our annualized percentage return for Colotrust Plus and Prime are roughly 0.01% and 0.04%. It's just indicative of our market right now. It'll help us if we do move forward and pass an election, but it does not help us on our interest rates in our general fund right now. So it's a double-edged sword. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else I want to mention here. I think we've talked a little bit about the expenditure for the Public Works facility. That kind of skews that on the facility side for this year, for the second quarter. The other thing I wanted to note is that I added on the bottom right a surplus or use of fund balance below each one of the columns, so you could kind of see that we're looking at utilizing roughly $2.2 million in fund balance, the vast majority of that being for the Public Works facility, okay? And then we had $715,000 in our original budget for various purposes in accordance with our strategic work plan on top of that. So we're still in very good financial condition because we had some monies to spend and we knew that, but we are spending those monies as well. Okay, so I'm gonna go through just really briefly. If you look at the restricted fund, roughly 3/4 of the revenue on that graph is for our sales tax, which is fairly normal for our restricted fund. And then the remainder is mostly for our building permit fees and those kind of things for restricted purposes and RETAs as well. Okay.
If you look at the next page there, so let's see. So that page also includes the budget from August 24th, assuming everything to date. But this also includes the COPs in here too. So, because remember we had those Albany Park COPs that we've spent through and received in revenue for this year, which kind of skews the results. But it's actually a good thing that we're spending the post money and we're doing some great work on Basalt River Park, and we've done some help with TACA. So, any questions on that?
I would never have guessed that.
Then, if you go to the next page, briefly, we've got our bond fund, which is an in and out only. That's just for repayment of bonds. And we do that as of June 1st and then December 1st. So that is actually, we just paid some interest, and so we pay our bigger cost at the end of the year on that. So that's tracking us right where we would anticipate. And then on our water fund, we're a little behind on our water service. I want to note that. Looking at 885,000 budgeted, only roughly 400,000 that we've received in so far. So we want to see what our third quarter is looking to do. But I've got a little bit of concern because we have a lot of deferred revenue on our water. And we don't have a lot of fund balance on our water fund to make up for that deferred. So we're going to need to have some more conversation about how to get those projects moving forward as we move forward into our 2022 budget year. Okay. Conservation Trust Fund is the monies we receive from the state for the lottery proceeds, and we were looking at utilizing some of that this year to help maintain our parks. And so that's why that is showing a deficit. Okay?
Good.
That's it.
All right, thank you. Can you just give us sort of the high-level summary on where we are relative to our sort of reserve policy, so our cash on hand and percentage of our budget and reserve to meet our
yes.
Yeah.
So when we look at, and this report doesn't reflect those numbers, okay?
Right.
But I've done a separate analysis for the Finance Advisory Board, and we talked about that in a lot of detail. And so when looking at our 2020 results, our audited results, which is a really great way to look at your fund balance on those actual numbers, is after our minimum fund balance, 40% required minimum fund balance, we have $2 million available for other purposes and for capital funds. It's usually, like you said, Mayor, it's for one-time money, such as capital improvements that could be utilized for bigger projects and that kind of thing.
Okay, cool. All right, so fiscally pretty good shape.
Yeah.
Nice job on how transparent this all is. It's perfect.
Okay, good.
Questions, comments? All right. Keep it up. Keep earning all that money, Christy. Perfect.
I'm working on it.
So if there are no further questions on the second quarter report, we'll go to council actions. And first up is a public hearing and resolution number 38, series of 2021. This is a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving the CSC sketch plan application to construct a grocery store and 70 residential apartment units on lots A and E of the Basalt Center subdivision with associated improvements. So James,
Mayor, I'll need to recuse myself from this item.
all right, thanks, Elise. You're so excused. You're the interlocutor here, aren't you, James?
Yeah, I am. I'll speak from back here at the computer so I can.
Okay, good deal. Evening, gentlemen.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council.
You seem surprised by the term gentleman. Did that take you?
All right. So this is a public hearing to consider an application for sketch CSC site plan review in association with rezoning request to the community serving commercial, which is Csc Zone District, for Basalt BCC LLC to construct a grocery store of approximately 9,000 square feet and 70 residential apartment units on the upper floors on the Basalt Center Circle property. It's also known as the BCC property. It's the property that previously housed Clark's Market and Habitat Restore. The subject property, and let me share my screen here. The subject property includes the space that housed Clark's and Habitat Restore, and it also includes the space that currently houses BLT, as well as Jimbo's Liquor Store, which is located right here, and the decorative materials space, which is the building that's connected to it, located right here on the map. The applicants are also proposing to make adjustments to the parking lot that is commonly owned by all the property owners within the subdivision, and the HOA has given consent for the applicant to make the application. The review process includes a CSC site plan review, which entails 2 rounds of review by the P&Z and Town Council. This is a sketch plan. There also would be a final plan review after the sketch plan round with the P&Z and Council. The P&Z reviewed the application and offered a recommendation of approval with the conditions that you have in the draft resolution that's in your packet. Before we get into the review, staff wanted to orient council on the packet materials that you have. Beginning on page 44 in your electronic packet, we've got a cover memo that identifies the discussion items and highlights the proposal that P&Z reviewed. You have a draft resolution that includes the conditions recommended by the P&Z that's on page 46 of your packet. And then we have the original application with 3 addendums to the application that were provided during the P&Z's review. They are in chronological order, with the most recent addendum being first in your packet, starting on page 56. Staff understands that this is a lot of information, but staff wants to make sure that council is fully informed and has the legal requirements to provide full materials to council. Starting on page 140, you've got the P&Z memos that include the analysis on the discussion items for the 3 P&Z meetings that took place. And then on page 159 of the packet, you've got the P&Z minutes from the June 29th meeting, which was the first meeting that they reviewed it. The other 2 meetings, the minutes will be completed before the second council meeting on the topic. And then we've got public correspondence on the proposal starting on page 177. For this meeting, staff suggests treating this meeting as an introduction meeting to the application and potentially discussion items. Staff recommends hearing a presentation from the applicants on the proposal to get council familiar with the application, and then asking questions of staff and the applicants, and then taking public comments because it is a public hearing. And then if time is available and council desires, staff can give an initial introduction to the discussion items on the application. So ultimately, staff would like to hear initial council comments and get understanding of additional items needed during review by council to make a determination at a future meeting. So with that, I'd like to introduce the applicants here this evening. We've got Tim Belinsky and Andrew Light. Would you guys like to introduce your team? And I'll get your slides queued up.
Glad to. Thanks, James. We're glad to be here tonight. Happy to be in front of town council after all of the lead up and work on this project. We're approaching 200 pages apparently, according to James. So it's been a good build-up, and we feel like we're really hitting stride. The group that we have here at the presenting table includes our architects firm Z Group, Scott McHale on the right, and Heather Henry, who is a principal at the Connect One Design Group, which is our landscape architecture firm. Andrew Light is immediately to my right. Andrew and I are partnering on this project and have a history of partnering on other projects in the community. James, are you complete there?
Yeah, we're queued up here. Here's a pointer too, if you'd like to use that. We don't have a clicker, so you have to, okay. Great.
Okay, thanks. So as I introduce the team, I want to re-emphasize that what we bring here is local expertise committed to this project, this town. Heather and Scott both run businesses that are located in the town of Basalt, as is my development business with Andrew. We're here, we're raising kids here. Some of us did raise kids here. We are looking, at this project as being an enhancement for downtown Basalt in all attributes. We bring forth our best efforts. This is an iterative process. It's a public process. Already through our work with the homeowner association group, the work with Bach, meetings with Post, meetings with P&Z, the project has evolved. We've been able to respond to some constructive feedback and adjust the course a bit, and we anticipate that to be the same way in which we'll work with town council. We welcome the process. We welcome the feedback. We welcome your involvement. And we're here. Andrew told me this afternoon that he moved here when he was 5 years old. And I didn't have gray hair when I moved here at 24 years old. Andrew's background is in real estate development. He's got some very impressive credentials. He's worked in the urban markets of San Francisco Bay Area and the Denver market and here, and he's a principal with Sotheby's Real Estate. So he sees a lot of real estate. My background is that I've been overseeing on behalf of owners of Willitstown Center for about the last 13 years, the development of that project. It's about done, and it's come around to be what we thought it would be when it was enacted in 2001 with, I bet Susan was right there, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did want to thank staff, by the way, through the process of getting here. James and Susan and Ryan and Jeff in the background, always a little worried about Jeff in the background, has done wonderful work in terms of guiding us along. The work that I've done at Willits is different than the work in downtown Basalt. Scale is different, the needs are different. It's not the same formula at all. But in what we've done in my background work has involved a lot of business guidance and business counseling and leading merchants to find spaces that made sense for them. It's been developing and working on residential buildings recently with Andrew in bringing out of the ground like-minded apartments that are efficient and compact and make sense for the local workforce and the community needs. And Andrew will tell you more about his perspective on those matters, as well as the grocery store industry is a specific niche. We worked hand in hand with Whole Foods and brought that to place. The principles of the proposed plan is what we'll address tonight. Not so much the plans themselves. We've got time in the next meeting to get into that. But what we really want to make sure is understood is that we have a common understanding of what led us to this table tonight in terms of our pursuit of an improvement plan for downtown. What led us there involved a heck of a lot of time of community activity, community feedback, community voices, organized nicely by the town. Staff members who are here at the table tonight, showing how to convert voices of the community into a plan. And we really believe that we are bringing in something that's responding to that almost verbatim. And the plan was well announced, it was codified, it was documented in master plan campaigns, it's in books, it's in legal documents. What we believe makes sense tonight is to establish common ground so that we understand where we're launching from. And if we missed anything, now's the time to be talking about it before we get to showing buildings, showing site plans, and showing more details that are involved. We're at sketch plan here. We really encourage interaction and kind of a meeting of the minds and an agreement on what the premises are before we get to the outcome. Years ago, I worked on a project called Obermeyer Place when I was working for the Obermeyer family, and in the early 2000s, late 1990s, we had a interesting coalition of public meetings called a co-op process, which was including all the agencies that were having vote authority in the city of Aspen. We had 23 public meetings. On about the 18th, we began to show the architecture and the way in which we were going to respond to the principles that we established in the first 18 meetings. So it was really, really important to get to common ground there before we took off into the next iteration. This process is a little different. We have to be a little further ahead in terms of submitting an application that meets the requirements and allows you more of an insight of what the answer is, or at least the proposed plan that we have in mind. But we don't want to discourage that involvement up front so that we don't get off on the wrong foot. And also, again, we've got a talented team, we've got talented staff to get this right. So as we get into the area of downtown, what you see here is as is. So I'll try and point to this area and try not get too far away from this microphone. The area has great history. It was a city market store when it was built in the mid-70s. It had a hardware store right next to it. The parking lot area was established as part of that plat process. And was it a plat or a subdivision? Do you recall, Susan?
Just a subdivision plat, yeah.
Subdivision. And then it coalesced around the broader neighborhood to include all the round of buildings that began to come up around it. It performed through the early 90s as a very busy city market store. And True Value was in the brick building next to it. I don't know how many of you guys might have been here at the time, but it was a hot spot. Obviously, things changed, and we'll get into some of the reasons for how downtown evolved from there. What we see about the downtown area, and maybe, James, you can go to the site plan. That's probably the next slide.
Okay.
Let's talk about the downtown core, and let's talk about this area as it stands right now. We all really have a soft spot for downtown Basalt. It is authentic. It is the true small town, not just in character or some jargon that depicts it. It is a small, charming downtown area with authentic Western roots and authentic railroad history. We're drawing on those things as we work to bring the city market store that became the Clark's Market store and the Restore and has been dark for a half dozen years back to its feet. The site is obviously at the intersection of Main and Main, which I would say is Midland Avenue and Two Rivers Road. Everybody comes through this intersection that's in the downtown core. We have Town Hall next to it. We have the highway not too far away, but out of sight. we have a collection of buildings that evolved around the project area. I assume you know it pretty well, but we want to make sure we're establishing the site and the launch pad that we're coming out of. The railroad history is very authentic. It's literally right there. That property boundary, that is that sweep of the line right there, is the indication of where the railroad Y, spelled W-Y-E, was in fact in place. We have an opportunity to really do some show and tell with the railroad history, because we're not pointing to an area further outside of town or drawing on something that was kind of distant. We have people in town that remember those lines being there. We have evidence of that history right there, and we want to make sure that's baked into what we're doing. The other charming part of downtown Basalt is its walkability, and you can't create that very easily. The organic nature of being able to find the nooks and crannies that are in downtown are really compelling and very unique. You know, I lived on Riverside Drive when our kids were younger, and I remember Nick, who's now 28, you know, on his trike bike going over the swinging bridge itself, coming down to Two Rivers Cafe for breakfast, and going and being comfortable with a little guy on a trike bike in and around the downtown area. That Luxinger Alley is a gem. It is something you discover if you really kind of dig a little deeper in Basalt and go up that lane and get up on top of Homestead, and then eventually up to that quaint neighborhood that has more historic buildings. The swinging bridge itself and the bike paths that get you in and around this area, but I think would agree this area is almost a plug or a stop for a lot of that interaction with cruising around either on your bike or your trike bike or walking, and it's become a bit of an inhibitor from that. Old Highway 82 is what Two Rivers Road was back when City Market was running big numbers here. And the intersection, I'll point to it again, Main and Main here, and the entry into the bustling parking lot and hotel, that was the Best Western years ago, and the gas station, all was sort of loose, admittedly, a lot of kind of wasted space and maybe awkward space in some of these areas because the geometry is kind of what it is. But it functioned, and it functioned in an era when there was a lot going on. In terms of downtown aspects, realities, and trends, what we have is an improved intersection out on the highway to understand that Midland Avenue is kind of set. We have the new underpass out at the roundabout area, the debate about bringing the entrance and egress off Highway 82 is resolved by way of the improvements that council and the community supported years ago. So we know what our entrance looks like. We have highway access, but not great highway visibility. That has a lot to do with the success or the challenges, more like, that the retailers and merchants in downtown face. From my perspective at Willits, I see 40,000 cars going by on a daily basis, seeing the front doors of these businesses. Downtown has plenty of charm and plenty of attributes to draw people in, but it doesn't have that kind of body count that would see and impressions to see what's going on down here. We've got some real positive things happening with the new buildings down the street, Rocky Mountain Institute, RMI, and Roaring Fork Conservancy, showing very unique, forward-thinking architecture and green-mindedness, bringing a campus vibe and setting to that end of town, and really setting the standard for some new buildings. Things happening more in the core of downtown immediately right here. We've got Art Base that recently relocated to find their permanent home up the street. and vacating the little campus we got here at Lions Park. We've got Aspen Skiing Company that has their headquarters right there, and bringing year-round permanent employee base to downtown. We've got restaurants and retail that are quite busy in the summer. I think that's been Basalt's ace in the hole. There's about 90 or 120 days a year that they can really count on big numbers. Then Basalt goes into its sleepy time and gets through the winter. We see from our work in the valley that professional offices are finding Basalt. Downtown is full and have very few vacancies, if any that I know of new professional offices. Heather's business is in the Basalt area, although they're out of Willits, and Scott and Seth Himlowski, who are principals in Z Group, recently bought their office space right on Midland Avenue. So there's retail vibrancy part of the year. Both rivers touch downtown, but it's been a struggle to have it connect to downtown. The beachhead is kind of over here with the Harry Teague Bridge over the Roaring Fork River, but Frying Pan is found only if you really look hard for it. The little gathering spot and kind of informal park where the confluence is kind of really out of the way there by 7-Eleven. There's minimal housing downtown. That's part of what we really see different from other downtown areas that have gone quiet and need to be brought back, whether that's Lodo, whether that's other urban areas. By bringing people in to live there, you see them immediately showing up in the merchants, at the bars and restaurants. We see that they become permanent supporters of the business community they're in, and hopefully you find that they also work within walking distance, and it's all self-contained. We now are beginning to see that traction happen, but the housing at this point in downtown is more just the single families that are on all sides around. The Rafta bus stop is busy, and I would say overall Basalt downtown feels safe. It feels friendly and is very inviting to our year-round community as well as to tourists who are here on a seasonal basis. As far as how downtown is performing, I would say you go back in time to the relocation, if you will, of City Market and of the post office moving across the river. It used to be right here when City Market was right here. The relocation of the public library that used to be in the building behind us, spreading out a little bit, still downtown, very intentionally to be part of downtown's character and fabric and network, but not in the core, a touch outside the core. Other influences I would say right now in real time is Willits is pretty much done. Willits had an impact on the vibrancy of downtown. It became an alternative for merchants, some who actually relocated and moved, Basalt Bike, Bristlecone, Midland Clothing. Some of them had ownership opportunities that were behind their thoughts of moving out. And some of them simply wanted to expand and find more walkable customer traffic. Retail itself has changed. That's a macro level. I think we all see that, especially through COVID time, that Amazon has replaced a lot of the shopping venues that otherwise would have been located in bricks and mortar in the downtown area, and for that matter, anywhere. That's really been a strong influence in terms of where downtown got quiet. What's upcoming here is, for the Mid-Valley economy, I would say big things are happening because Stedman Clinic will be open in the next 12 months. Bill, we met with their CEO, Dan Drebaugh. They have big plans. You see the proud new 3-story building at Willits. That, along with their alignment with Aspen Valley Hospital, is going to be a significant economic boost, although we don't know all the details to that. They don't either. But it will drive visitors because it's a destination medical clinic. It's where you go for services. You get on a plane and you go there, and that's what Stedman is all about. They've got 4 surgical suites. That's a lot of activity. So Stedman is one to watch. It'll influence our need for lodging in the Mid-Valley. It's already influencing, we can see, some of the housing, some of that hyper activity of the housing market. We hear some of it related to some of the new employees coming in for the Stedman staff. The tree farm broke ground. That's going to have an influence on downtown. Merchants, again, will find alternative places that they could go. As I oversaw Willits, we were worried about it, partly because it has the ability to charge lower tax rate for sales taxes. And they are breaking ground on, 180 units in their multifamily apartments and underway. So that end of town is going to see another round of big things happening, not necessarily within our town's vernacular of where we wanted to see growth happen. In fact, it was outside of our growth boundary, or is inside of our growth boundary, but we were looking for it to become part of the town's municipality. Thank you, Susan. And then Basalt River Park across the way. That brings in free-range kitchen that'll move from the other side. They are already owning that site that you see go up. And the 11,000 square feet of new office commercial, could be some retail, although it's a little bit removed from the walking paths of downtown. So we anticipate it to be kind of a professional office area that'll engage as best it can, but will not have a strong retail presence. But we do see that bringing in a couple dozen residential units to downtown on an overall basis. So, James, if you click to the next slide, we'll just see what was showing on today's Aspen Daily News. And that is a reminder, which I think we've covered the points on, as to where downtown felt like it needed some help. And it did need some help. And the tailwind that we currently have in the form of, frankly, people leaving urban markets because of COVID and wanting to move to a wonderful community like Basalt is providing some tailwind, but we haven't seen much change in merchants mix or commercial real estate activity or rents changing, for instance, out at Willits. Let's move on, or back to the site plan, the Google Earth. Thanks, James. So as we look at Basalt Center, focusing a little more in there, in that tight area there, right across the street from us, there's a lot of realities that Andrew and I and our team have had to face up to and work with. The property that we're talking about and that we control is under contract, and it's about 24,000 square feet on the ground floor level. That includes Jimbo's Liquor in that area and BLT Taqueria in that area, and this area was occupied by Restore, and prior to that, Clark's Market or iterations of Clark's Market, and has been pretty dark and defunct in terms of business vibrancy for about 10 years. This building here we also have under contract to include as a logical kind of rectangle that we can work with, and that's owned by the owner of Decorative Tile Materials. And she's got a good little business going there. So we have this big void here that we need to deal with. And the property that we'll also be talking a lot about is not the property that is capable of being privately controlled and owned. The property out here at the entry point and up to this arc line has been discovered to actually be owned by the town of Basalt, which you might be aware of at this point. So there are parking spaces along that border edge there, and the green belt that's up between Two Rivers Road and on that berm overlook into the parking lot. The grade is kind of flattened and walkable here, and it starts to get higher, and there's actually a little staircase there. That's town property. Out here, we have the dash line around the homeowner association. So there's about 14 voters that are involved with the ownership of the common area that is everything that's flat site work, asphalted, until you get to the individual buildings all scattered around here that share the operation and the ownership of the parking lot area. That homeowner association is a mixed bag because, as we see it, there's a lot of them, and everybody kind of has their own perspective. If you're a property owner up here with a gallery and an office space above, or these kind of blocks in here, you might feel pretty strong about your parking and your pedestrian flow and the things that are particular to your blocks and buildings. But out here is a whole world away. If you're a hotel owner, as we have in the audience, the proprietor of these three buildings, the Aspinall, their concern, of course, is parking for those nighttime guests and making sure that those spaces are available to them, and the flow and the visibility to the former highway and the intersection is such that as a hotel, people will know where they are going. Down here is a pair of cabins, which are often overlooked. That's the Prinster family. They're out of Grand Junction, and they were the original owners of City Market. So they built the City Market store and carved out that spot, and we've been in touch with them quite a bit. And they are perfectly happy with their cabins, and as they perched over the river's edge. And of course, their access in and out to their cabin property is through the homeowner association. They're not members of the HOA. They're an outside group to that. Also outside of the HOA are these areas. The gas station, which recently changed hands, Cassie's, was owned by a fellow that lived up valley until about in the last year, and that gas station is now owned by a group that has, out of Texas, I believe, that just runs gas stations. They're convenience store and operators. Alpine Bank, the back of Alpine Bank at least, and their drive-through that comes through here that's adjacent to the property. This is Alpine Bank's little storage building next to this area. And there's a kind of rough and tumble area in here that used to be part of a pedestrian walk-through there, but it's been fenced off over the years. And then Tempranillo. And some housing that's related to Javier's business there. So you get a lot of influences around who all have direct interaction with this area, and then you have the voting homeowner association. Parking lot, we would say, functions because it's an organic outcome of what worked over time and settled in as a functional plan, but there's a lot of wasted space. We see this being a very awkward zone that needs improvement, and is a real opportunity with our project to bring this into line so that you can in an organized and predictable way travel through here and find parking for the retail edge that'll face that area. The vacant big box of this is definitely a first impression for people coming in to downtown Basalt. It has the appearance of just being a dead zone, and we'd like to do something about it. And the parking lot itself, although functional, I think you'd probably agree if you've been over there in the last couple of years, is kind of a free-for-all. There's a mix of cars and trucks that park there for loads of time because it's available. It's a defunct parking lot area because the property across and serving that area is defunct itself. But it did, again, perform well 15, 16, 17 years ago as a functioning site for the grocery store. Again, no housing on site. No housing, no housing, no housing. There's an opportunity here, as you know, in our project proposal to bring in about 70 units. And I would also point out, as we look at the current conditions, that this town-owned property, we'll call it the landscape green berm, is kind of a barrier to interacting on Two Rivers Road, where you'd be in front of these businesses and interacting here, and can't quite get across until you get into this nice little park on the Four Corner intersection, comfortably into this otherwise potentially vibrant area. So we see that this pass-through area needs to be more porous and more passable on both pedestrians who probably are carrying groceries if they're parking up here and coming across, and also bike ability so that you could come off the street and come in here. So we see this zone here, although owned by the town of Basalt, you'll see we took some liberties in terms of showing some inspiration for making it work. So the collection of buildings are what they are. They're a result, everything in here is a result of this having been set in first. And no doubt there's visionaries who have more aspirations than most, and they see that a retail building along this side of the block, inside of the parking and on common property and town property, and dealing with the grade change and dealing with the change in parking and creating buildings here where one could probably not see anything beyond that, have made it difficult for us to envision a project that's doable, that doesn't simply take advantage of what's been built organically over time around it. Our sense of things, that Heather will get into a little more because she was so intimately involved in the master plan rework that was issued in 2020, and the work prior to that, is that there's almost a call to action that we are seeing for us to do the building that we'll be proposing. The manner in which we'll go about the proposed building is to utilize the community serving commercial zone district. This is all part of C2, probably that is part of C2 zone district as it stands today, commercial 2 stories. Yet the Csc Zone District was enacted unanimously by the town of Basalt in 2016. It provides a roadmap for how to get the right kind of retail anchors, the right kind of vibrancy creators into a project that also introduces as a secondary use the ability to bring in small-scale residential, nothing bigger than 1,400 square feet. And that ordinance and the prior work to it, which was the Downtown Advisory Committee, DAC, the Our Town Planning Campaign, which is a voluntary group, all ultimately guided by the planning department and the town of Basalt, and their conclusions have led us to establish this is our plan. So with that, should we take a minute with you, Heather, and have you talk about the Csc Zone District areas and then also the master plan areas? We've got a few slides to use for that.
We can go to the next slide. Thanks, Tim. And the next slide. So I think what's interesting and exciting for me is to see this is essentially the first project of significance to come forward after the 2020 master plan, right? So we were collectively, when I say we were so proud of that effort. And the reason for that was that There was such a strong feeling that the input that we received through the community outreach, and then ultimately the conclusions of the master plan, really felt like they represented such a strong cross-section of Basalt. Now, were the answers in that master plan clear and black and white? Absolutely not, because that's not Basalt. It's never that clean, it's never that pretty, it's never that black and white. And so I think what we want to kind of go through today is just enough to walk back that history, to start thinking about what we heard at that time, what were the conclusions, and how have we woven that into the project that you guys see before you. So this diagram really starts even before the 2020 master plan, right? So this CSC Zone District was very much the outcome of the two processes of the DAP and the Our Town planning. Think of the investment on the town's part, not only strictly from a monetary perspective, but the amount of hours that went in, voluntary and otherwise, from staff's perspective, right? So just fundamentally, the conclusions of that CSC Zone District were very much about where we wanted density, and this was identified as one of those places, and that this resounding, we want density versus sprawl. This was not about moving into areas in Southside or on the boundaries of Basalt, right? This was about taking properties that were clearly at this point underutilized and being able to use those to build in density. Density meaning people who could live here, okay? So what we're then, I mean, there were a number of other things that fell out, but the second was also the grocery. So while all things perhaps strictly economic, if someone was to run certain models, might say, that seems insane. The community said resoundingly, this is a gap in our lives. When we lost Clark's Market, for everyone that lived in and around Old Town, it was now a big gaping hole. I cannot pick up lunch if I work here, just in the stop in and grab something. I cannot get the loaf of bread and milk and eggs. I can't get, you know, it's just, it was this kind of, I can't do this anymore. And this was here before. And so how could we incentivize those things to occur in the CSC Zone District? And that basically occurred by saying, well, you know, here's what we can do. We want to incentivize this. This is going to be a place where some larger building might happen. And that meant 4 stories, and that meant more density, it meant small units, it meant we want to incentivize these things, okay? So that was kind of the CSC Zone District. Fast forward, master plan, next slide. So talk a little bit about, we had key parcels and primary parcels. This was one of only 4 primary parcels. Key parcels were like 11, primary parcels were 4. So primary parcels were where we spent a lot of time talking as a group and then going out to the community and presenting the ideas, the options, what could happen in these places, okay? So Clark's Market was clearly one of those primary parcels. Before that even happened, as we did this outreach in our 6,000 some odd data points between in-person and online, the community throughout Basalt was saying very clearly that there's been a lot of investment in the Willits area, right? And it's now becoming very clear that we need some of that same investment in Old Town, whether it was Midland Avenue, whether it was some of the genuine pie-in-the-sky projects that you see behind you there. So that's the top projects from the online and in-person voting, right? Do another bridge over the river by the library, the underpass to South Side. Those are some big old nuggets that came out of that master plan. But almost overwhelmingly, the projects listed were all about investing in Old Town, that it really needed some of that same reinvigoration that Willits had seen for so many years. So think about that from the top line, and then we kind of worked our way down into some of these projects. So as we presented Clark's and this parcel, one, we were also told as a group to kind of create a master plan and then create some very high aspirational things. So when people wanted to talk about another bridge over Midland, you know, they were not shut down in that process. And for Clark's, we developed a series of 3 site studies that really talked about what kind of a really significant redevelopment might look like, and then where you might shoot from the moon from there, right? And so those were huge redevelopments that were parking structures, a new civic plaza, you know, boutique hotels, that kind of thing. What the master plan acknowledges is that that would require not only the HOA kind of organization that Tim talked about, but really also an intervention from the town's perspective. This would not be something that was going to be strictly privately driven, okay? And then the master plan had option A. So this is option A that was presented out of 3 options. And actually, there was kind of a middle ground too. One of the other options, you know, talked about how to kind of redevelop the corner down by, you know, the end of the triangle, let's say, and keep the Clark's Market footprint. So there was a lot of pieces that kind of went into that. But this was the one that really talked about predominantly how to redevelop within the footprint of the Clark's Market itself and what that might look like. And so, like all things are not black and white, when Clark's went out with, you know, 3 different versions, A, B, and C, I think the votes were, in terms of the in-person, it was, you know, 27, 42, and 31, or 32, something like that, right? So for all things Basalt, you can talk about it being an even split. Go to the next slide. So in leading up to that, when some of these options were presented to the community, and really what we saw, these are some of the in-person exhibits. The online voting came in fairly similarly. But what the community was really looking at, when you see the bottom right, it's very tiny, but it says small grocery. The middle with the second most dots was mixed use. I think the upper right was a retail. Yeah, I don't know if James wants to zoom in a little bit, but
Sure.
yeah. So bottom right was grocery, yep, and the one above it was mixed use. And then you had, that was the boutique hotel, which got a series of votes as well. So this voting actually kind of established the baseline to produce those 3 options. At the end of the day, if you look at the image for the mixed use, it is this project we're about to present. It's 3 stories with a 4-story setback, so that you don't kind of feel that 4-story facade. But ultimately, you have that density of a 4th story in terms of residential. Now, we had a comment at P&Z, well, dense housing or dense residential, you know, only got a few votes. Look at that image. You know, that's essentially 5 to almost 6-story building in terms of its height. Clearly, that was the breaking point for the community, right? Yes, we want this density. Yes, we want some of that housing. No, we can't stomach, you know, 5, 6 stories in Old Town. So there was clearly a breaking point there. So what I think that one of the challenges is, as we went out to the public and all of those options were presented, like many things Basalt or all of our communities in the valley, again, not a black and white. So here was this tension and this pushback between, you know, projects like the bigger sort of option B and C, you know, redevelop this whole thing, and could be all of this, and you had people that would be amazing, and then you had people, there's no way. We love Old Town, we love that small town character. How do you define that has always been a challenge for us as consultants. But like, where was that breaking point, right? And so there was this tension between how far to go in terms of, we want density, not sprawl. We want to encourage this redevelopment. This is what the Csc Zone District is for, but here's the breaking point where it was too much. I think that what this project represents, and as we move forward and talk about the footprint we're staying within and how we're able to kind of get this vacancy out of there, get this grocery back in, get the housing that we want, we really felt like it hit that sweet spot, right? And I don't know if, for you, probably like that, right? It's a golfing term. I tried to find like the urban term, the urban definition of what sweet spot was, but it just kept coming back to golf and baseball. So if you go back to the previous slide, I think in the master plan, what this option represented was the one that was very realistic. Was it shoot for the moon? Was it wait, I don't know, 20 years before the town and the HOA and everything else can get organized? No. Does this preclude what can happen next? Not necessarily. Many of the other options showed how we have a ramp that comes up, connects to Two Rivers Road, you know, rest of the HOA gets organized, the cabins change generation or they change hands and they want to redevelop. Absolutely. Somehow does this put a stake in the ground that nothing at BCC will ever happen again? No. Does it mean that, you know, a building all the way up to the corners of Two Rivers Road might not happen? Yes. But honestly, that was not really a kind of a preferred option for the community anyway, because suddenly we have this beautiful park. The openness of the four corners between Midland Avenue and Two Rivers Park is what people cherish right now. Our sort of view triangle that we were supposed to keep intact at all times for Basalt River Park was so important. So, you know, where this kind of landed in terms of let's get all of these things that the community really said they wanted out of the Csc Zone District and out of the master plan onto this footprint without trying to, you know, blow up the world around it, for us is what is really exciting to bring forward as the right project after this master plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take it on. You can go to the next slide there. Go to the next one there. So when the CSZ zoning calls for a series of what they call qualifying anchors, which would then allow you to have the density for the residential. And there's a series of them. It's like a gym, a grocery. We kept thinking that's obviously what was voted on the most. And Tim and I have been traveling around, and we see these grocery stores that have food stalls in them, right? So it's a grocery store, but it's also a food hall. And I think you can see, we've tried to capture a few of these images from different ones we've seen. This one on the top left happens to be in Denver. You can see a lot of times they'll have merchandise food, but they'll also have they could have independently owned vendors within the grocery. So that's, you know, there's a very entrepreneurial aspect to it. It's a gathering place, and we really, you know, thought that when the CSC zoning calls for, what's calls for is called a there. That's what it was really called for. And so we said, you know, what is it that would create a there? Is it a gym? You know, it's really this grocery store concept we thought would be the most exciting. This is not a grocery store that's intended to try to compete with City Market. It just won't ever have the scale. It doesn't have the visibility from the highway, but it will give a lot of other reasons for someone to come there besides just buying a loaf of bread or a can of beans. And we've seen these succeed all over the country. I was just recently, and we've seen a number of them in Denver, which we can give more information in later meetings, but we're very, very excited about this concept. And the key part of it is allowing, we'd keep the liquor store with Jimbo's, and we'd have a food hall which could have a taqueria in it, and we could have there's a plaza which I'll show you in another slide, but it activates a sense of arrival. Go on the next slide, please. The other thing we thought about was, you know, there was a discussion at one point of a hotel here. There was residential, but it was never delineated what kind of residential that would be. All of us live here. All of us have employees, and all of us know that we have friends that can't run their restaurant because they can't have enough people to work on Mondays and Tuesdays. So what does this town need? It needs small, activated units that are occupied by locals. And that's exactly what we're trying to propose. It's very similar to what we've built in Willits before. What our design we've called for is more than 50% studios. And so these are places where locals can live. They'll live year-round. They will be, by their size, they'll be very, they won't cater to, people coming as tourists. We don't want short-term rentals. And we don't want to, we're not even proposing to condominiumize the building. These would not be for sale. These would be 100% rental buildings. And we think that would be great, not just for the local businesses, but these are all, this density here near the bus station and near the offices, we think would be a very, very good fit for people living and staying in Basalt. So a couple things, we can walk through. These are some of the images we have. Very clean, very compact, very efficient, and very comfortable, and people love them. So, that's what we thought would be great for this site. Next slide, please. So the site plan that we've talked about, I think the key part I want to show you here is the idea we have is this plaza that comes out into the parking lot a little bit. And this would be the retail, which would include the liquor store and the grocery concept with food and activated grocery store in there. This is about 9,000 feet in total here. The rest of our building is at-grade parking. So one of the key things that I think we'll talk about in more detail is we were able to get this plan that we're proposing approved by the HOA because they understood that it actually significantly reduces the demand for parking in this outdoor lot versus what is there today, which, if it ever got re-tenanted, would just drive everyone out into that lot. So we have 62 spaces inside this perimeter of our building, and then so that significantly reduces the parking demand for the parking lot out there. The other items of this site plan, you can see that we've improved sort of some pedestrian connections we can get into where you could walk and connect here. We've added a pedestrian connection ramp here, so if people were walking or parking up here, they could come in easily. This would be the entrance to the apartments. So that's a little lobby, like a little outdoor area for the residents of the residential to gather. You have a barbecue out here and some tables and some shade structures. And then the entrance to the apartment garage would be over here. So those are really the fundamentals of what we're proposing in terms of a site. And as I said, it was approved by all the HOA, and so we have the neighbors' support, which we thought was very important before coming before you all. Anything else to add?
Only one other thing, and that is to point out that with the downsizing of the commercial, currently it's nudging 28,000 square feet. Moving down to 9,000 square feet, you create less traffic because of that. There's less commercial. There's also a reduction of, therefore, the amount of parking that was otherwise allocated to that bigger building. And the parking lot itself, it's kind of a magic change all to itself. In addition to the 72 or 62 parking spaces that are inside the public or the private property under the apartment residential area, we've created 39 spaces to the homeowner association's parking lot that are no longer needed by only 9,000 square feet of commercial space. So there's a relief to the homeowner association's parking lot of 39 by some standards that are used for that, 39 parking spaces. So with that, we should turn over quickly to Scott McHale from Z Group, who's able to talk about the design background and influence that he and his team have integrated into what you'll see later. We won't try and do it tonight. The architecture and the building that will be part of this plan. Scott?
Okay, thank you. Next slide, James, please. Oh, wait, we gotta jump.
Yeah, keep jumping.
Keep going, sorry. Next slide, next slide, next slide. Stop. Okay, I'm gonna just talk about the history and some of the inspiration of the architecture in the building. So again, I'm Scott McHale with Z Group Architects. We're happy to be here in Basalt. I started my career in the Valley back in 1995. I lived and worked in Basalt and have since moved up and down the Valley, and now I own a business in downtown Basalt. So it's very exciting to be back. I'm happy to be here, especially to be able to present this project before everyone here. So thank you. As we understand the Csc Zone District, to take the words from the master plan, is to combine the social capital objectives of the Basalt Master Plan with the vitality objectives of the C2 Downtown Business District. And we know that this BCC parcel is one of 4 key parcels. Our project site is a high-profile location at the main entrance to downtown Basalt. When we, as a design team, approach a project, we pull inspiration from a project site's past, present, and future, its inhabitants, and its surrounding environment. So we're trying to look at everything in totality as a holistic design. The project designs building typology and inspiration is a modern-day translation of the historic Western Mountain Town Main Street meets historic Western Railroad and Rocky Mountain modern architecture design with contemporary and modern reinterpretations. So that's a mouthful. Trying to achieve a lot here at this intersection, major intersection. As we know, the history of where we're pulling from, one of the key elements is the historic Western Mountain Town and Main Street that Basalt has, and will continue. We love the small town character that we see in downtown, and we're pulling from that history with a lot of our mass scale and character elements. Some of those elements include 20 to 30 feet historic facade building modules, 2 to 3 story building elements with parapet roof forms, brick, wood, and glass storefront and detailing elements that we can see, inviting storefront windows and doors as businesses and retail and restaurants, need to survive. Main Street ceiling heights are taller, so the commercial first floor spaces have more room and more livability on them. The historic Victorian proportions of the fenestration windows with narrower and taller windows. Canopies and awnings, and art murals on brick walls. There's some good inspiration, and so we want to bring some of the art into the design of the projects. So some good whimsy. Other important factors, and a major important is the railroad history of Basalt. And that's been, we're trying to translate that into some of the architectural elements. And some of those history and elements include that we had 2 railroads, the Colorado Midland Railway and the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad. As Tim mentioned, the Basalt Y is the main intersection. There's one of the most historic images as the rail line to the left goes up to Rudai, and then the Midland Spur, the curves, goes off to Aspen. And then if we didn't know, then the railroad went from Grand Junction to Denver and through Basalt and up Rudai over Hagerman Pass. So it's kind of interesting to think of it like that, whereas I-70 now kind of cuts through the canyon and changes how we experience the mountains. But all good evolution of things. So this Y is extremely important. So bringing that railroad heritage and some of its elements into the design, that's our challenge. And some of those elements might include railroad trestle bridge architecture. We can see the exposed structures, overhead canopies, exposed structural elements, steel and wood express detail connections, brick, wood, and steel materials. And that pulls in some of the industrial element design that we'll see mixed in. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about Rocky Mountain modern design with some contemporary reinterpretations. Some of those elements might include clean modern design elements, simple, not ornate, low sloping roof forms, exterior decks and exposed structures, adding a tension between the natural and industrial design elements, texture and scale with horizontal vertical siding, natural light and openness within the units and the whole project, and then neutral and warm and earthy colors. And that's just kind of touching on when we get into the architecture. That's it.
wanted to add one last thing, is we wanted, the residential port was proposed to be 100% electric with almost as much solar as we can do across the roof. So I think that's a big important thing for us, is we want to make sure that's important. We would like to try to do it for the commercial, but we're not, we have to make sure that would work for the food vendors.
So I think that is plenty for tonight from our standpoint of being able to bring you guys up to speed on where we're going and where we've been spending our time. We'd like to turn this over to staff, to you, Mayor, and take it from here in terms of any kind of feedback, questions, and answers you might have for us tonight, depending on your meeting protocol.
All right, thanks, Tim. James, what's your druther here? What do you, how do you want to proceed?
Staff would suggest asking questions of the applicant and staff, and then taking public comments, and then if there's time available, staff could go through the discussion items briefly, or you could get to initial council comments on additional information you might need. So there's kind of a council option there.
Okay.
And I would just recommend maybe that we kind of keep initial questions down, just because we've had public sitting here for quite a while, and so maybe we just ask a couple burning questions and then we turn it over to the public, would be my recommendation.
What if we just
I'm
take
good with
public comment
public
first?
Okay, one person. What?
We're all saying the
what's
same
your
thing. Why
suggestion?
don't we do public comment first?
Okay. We will defer council comments to give the public a chance to speak. So with that, we will open this meeting for public comment based on what you've seen. Please come up to the podium. We humbly request that you keep your comments within a reasonable time frame. We like 3 minutes because lots of people want to speak, and so out of deference to others, we ask that you keep your comments to the point. And so we would love to hear from you, and please come on up. Just raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you, and you come up when you're ready to talk.
And just one other thing, if there's anybody that's watching on TV, the easiest way to ask for access during the public hearing is to hit your link that's the first page on the council agenda on the Agenda Center, or you can call 1-346-248-7799, and the webinar ID is 899-2469-0191, and if you have trouble, text 970-379-1514. And one other thing, I did try to circulate the sign-in sheet there, so if you're going to speak, I just appreciate if you could grab that sign-in sheet and sign in. Pam?
And Mayor, we do have 5 people. 2 of them have the same name, so I'm not sure if it's the same individual or maybe another household member, but there are 5 people sitting in the attendees section, and one of them certainly has his hand raised to speak. The other had submitted an email wanting to speak, notifying us earlier today that he wanted to speak, so.
All right, thank you. So with, pardon?
We're down to 4.
Okay, great. So with that, the forum is open here for anyone that wants to address council on the proposed BCC apartments and grocery store. So, Rick, you've addressed council in public meetings before, haven't you?
Rick Stevens, Riverside Drive, and I wanted to go first because I'll forget what I was going to say if I wait too much longer, and I actually wrote it down. But a lot of history was discussed tonight, and as I was listening at home, which is the first meeting I've watched in a long time, I just wanted to make some comments. A couple things currently that are going on is the discussion about migration to the mountains and the impact that it's having on communities and trying to keep their workforce and trying to keep their middle demographic alive. I talked to Chris Matera at the Chamber about this, and a lot of milestones that people have achieved between the ages of 30 and 40 are being pushed out quite a ways, getting married, having a family, owning a home, all that kind of thing. So that's something to pay attention to that's right up in front of us now. The master plans, since I've been involved here with the revision of the 89 master plan, all intended to have a downtown core, something that was density-based, that was vibrant, that could support. This was before all the annexations in Roaring Fork Club. At that time in '94, when we updated that, we started talking about the confluence, particularly the frying pan, the Roaring Fork. And Harry Mayer made a comment about the confluence being a synergy, is something that creates 7 times the energy as the individual rivers create. And I think that was important to us, and we acquired that property for $235,000, and it was our first open space purchase. And it became the initiator for a lot of discussions about downtown development, how important the confluence was. We got into the 99 revision with looks at the river setbacks and the environmental sensitive areas and the urban growth boundaries, and again, density. We entered into the 2001-2002 master plan with that in mind and did a visioning exercise in downtown that called out we could do 500,000 square feet of development in this, what you can see out here. But what we decided to do instead was to keep the library downtown, find some parcels like Levinson, which we purchased with the first open space bonds, to put a RMI and the Conservancy on. That started in 2001. So we kept looking at this downtown vitality thing as an issue to keep our community engaged, if you're small town character, however you want to describe it. Density became an issue, and we went into kind of a planning period where we said, well, we can't do this without looking at that. The community serving zone district that came on board, I was really in favor of spreading that out all over the map. It wasn't just about the CDC parcels. It was really something that I thought could benefit any of our land use applications. We're kind of now at the execution phase of all these things that have been pent up for 25 years. I think the vision that you guys came out with when Auden and those guys in 2018, Gary was there, and looked at a community that was sustainable, that was engaging, that was inclusive, that you could see your friends downtown. That, has led into the discussion of the master plan. And, somebody used, I think you used the sweet spot. Well, the sweet spot for us was the confluence. And I think the sweet spot for you guys right now that's in front of you is the confluence of all these millions of dollars and public hearings and public comment and master plan processes that are now coming into one particular project, in my opinion. So I think if you can look at this as another opportunity to create a confluence of energy, that Basalt could benefit from it. And there's a lot of things out there, right, to consider, but we can't really sit around for another, I guess it's about 29 years almost now, without moving something forward. So I think we're definitely at the point where the community would like to see a plan implemented, a strategy executed, however you want to look at it. And thank you for your time.
Thanks for the comments, Rick.
It's going to be
Appreciate
exciting
it.
around here for a while.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address council on the proposal? Come on up. Come on down.
Hi, my name is Virginia Leffler. I live at 721 East Sopers Drive. I had written something that I actually feel like now I want to change now that I've actually heard a lot more detail. The detail didn't make me feel that much better about things, but I feel like I have more facts sort of to talk about. So I guess I'm going to write something else up and bring it to the next meeting, but I just want to say I can't believe that 4 stories is even being entertained. I feel so strongly that this town is just the most amazing place, has the best character, and I think building something 4 stories there, I know people say they want density, but I feel like I have talked to a number of people, and not one of those people would say that they want 4 stories in the middle of Basalt. I have 6 letters here from friends who couldn't make it to the meeting. I don't know who I give these to. Thank you. And I look forward to talking in more detail at the next one. But I just really hope that people are thoughtful about this and look forward. And I do think it needs to be developed, and I think it needs to be a mixture of housing and retail, but I just think the scale needs to be reduced drastically to what it looks like they're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address council? Pam?
We do have
Want to do
attendees waiting.
Catherine? It's not Catherine, who's, that's Catherine, that's
So,
ours, Catherine, who's,
Mr. Cunningham
Well,
has-
Brian was the first one to
oh,
raise his hand.
Mac.
Sorry. Mr. Cunningham had
Matt
presented
Cunningham.
an email before, so let me promote him to speak. And then Brian has his hand raised also.
Is it working, Pam? You want me to?
Trying to get him in to promote to panelist. It doesn't seem to be working. There he goes. There he goes.
Can you hear us, Mac?
You're muted.
You're muted.
He's muted.
Right, I keep hitting the button, ask to unmute. Mac, can you unmute?
You can go to the other one, right?
He's
Brian's the one who went.
He's not this.
Okay, let's try. There's Brian.
Hi there.
We hear you.
Hi, Brian, we can hear you if you want to provide your comments.
I do. I would like to echo the statements of the woman previously a little bit. I think infrastructure could be a bit of an issue. Egress, outgress, I think the density is a bit much. And I would like to see our small town, still have that small town feeling. And I don't feel that a four-story building sort of encompasses that, especially at the entrance of Basalt. It sort of takes away the whole downtown, in my opinion. So I will also look forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Brian, can you please state your full name for the record?
And address.
My full name is Brian Porter.
I'm sorry, Brian, what is the last name?
Porter.
Thank you. Thank you, Porter.
We live on 560 Cedar Drive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, we've got Mac or Ann Stevenson, whoever's prepared to go next.
Raquel.
Putting Ann in there, it looks like she's popping in.
He's ready to roll out in the audience.
Mac or?
Hi. This is Ann Stevenson.
Ann.
Are you ready? Hi, guys. I didn't know I raised my hand and wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I would like to echo what the last two speakers said. I fully applaud more affordable housing, especially rental housing. I just have a issue with a four-story building. And I know it's off topic because I'm still fighting for a two-story town hall. So I would echo what the last two participants said. And I also have spoken to, everyone I've spoken to is opposed to the four-story idea. And that's all I have to say now, and I'll look forward to future meetings. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Appreciate it. Is Mac ready to go?
Some people just pop on and they're not necessarily want to
Yeah,
comment.
they may just be watching,
Okay,
so we may
fine.
want to ask them
Or
first.
anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Okay, gentleman in the front and then young lady in the back.
Good afternoon, evening. Gonzalo and Jimbo's across the street. I've been meeting with these guys, since the beginning. They're the evil developer sometimes, but there are people that do live here in Basalt and that I feel that do want the best for Basalt to happen. I know then there's the people that have the bumper sticker, keep Basalt shitty. Basalt is never shitty, has never been shitty. So I'd say it's heartbreaking. I mean, do I want to lose revenue for a year? Do I want to, it's going to be horrible to be through all this development and stuff, but we have the core of Basalt there sitting empty. That, you know, that kind of happened. So something definitely has to happen, and these guys has, you know, definitely stepping up to the challenge, and, you know, for that at least they definitely, you know, I think it's important they're doing that. These come more from the planning side. You know, people were a little concerned about the employee housing part of how much rental it is. I can tell you that 2 of my employees did live in employee housing there, and it's not cheap employee housing, so what they did was worked a little harder to afford that employee housing that you guys call it, and they got kicked out. Because all of a sudden, after 1 year, they made a little too much money, and then they were ineligible. So it's like, now we're instead of saying, great, you know, you're working harder, good, you know, we claim these millennials don't work hard, these 2, you know, younger guys work harder and got kicked out. So I think before we ask for more employee housing, we probably should review the employee housing rules before we get into that. I think the concept is great. We are seeing also, because, you know, if I don't hear about it, it probably didn't happen in Basalt. I own the liquor store. Raquel over there, she owns BLT, and we are the 2 busiest buildings or businesses in downtown Basalt, so we know about it. And I can tell you that people are losing their houses every day because Basalt is getting busier, and places are getting sold for people from out of town to come and buy these places, to rent it for a higher rent or whatever. So we do need places for people to live, people to work in Basalt, people to work in Aspen. It's not rent, it's not like great, amazing penthouses that some guys are building there, but this is different. This is something they're doing for the town of Basalt, having young families or single guys that are working here to make this town flourish and be plausible. Honestly, I don't know how many of you guys are trying to hire people. It's not happening. There's no one that can afford to live here, and this would bring an opportunity for people to live, you know, market rent or employee rent, if we can revisit what that employee housing system works. But I think the concept is great. I am from you know, South America. I travel a lot, and this market concept is great. I mean, it never stopped working in Asia and in South and Central America, but now it's flourishing again in Europe. It's flourishing again in big cities. So we're, as Andrew was saying, we're not competing with city market prices. We're not competing to Whole Foods, who definitely has the structure to have that super farmer, whatever, you know, overpriced stuff. This is giving the opportunity to small businesses or small soon-to-be owners of businesses in the valley to have the opportunity to rent a little spot and be your meat guy, your taco guy, your bike rental guy, your shoe repair guy. And I've seen it work for, you know, centuries before the supermarket concept came, and it's flourishing again, and that's what these guys are trying to do. That's experienced market. That I actually brought it up to them, and they were like, that kind of sounds right, because, you know, Clark's Market, Roxy's, all of them, they're like, oh, we won't do it because it didn't work. I moved here when that place was still there, you know, 3, and people tell me today they would walk to City Market because that place was horrid. No one would walk in there to buy a gallon of milk. They would walk barefoot to go get some milk over in, you know, on their side, because that wasn't the concept that,
right,
you know, Basalt needed for a market. I think that we should at least give a big thought on this. Obviously,
we're gonna have to
we're in town here to say, you know, how to say and these guys definitely will hear and we'll work it out. But I think it's a good cause.
Thank you kindly. Do you have Gonzo's name full?
I do, I know him. Thank you.
Hemos encontrado muchas veces, señor. Yes, please.
I'm technically an outsider. I hope you'll give me my 3 minutes. I don't live in Basalt, but I have a 3-generational family in the valley, and we're moving to Old Basalt for the small town quality. We're in the process right now. I'm a refugee from a town that got this so wrong, and they're never going to get another chance, and that's Aspen. And the thing I guess I wanted to speak to is that over and over the years, projects like this would come to council and P&Z offering really reasonable rents for families and young people. And they always had density because it's the only way they're economically viable. And the town would always vote against them. And now we literally will never have this chance again to house people that work with us. And so I just think the density is hard to swallow. And as I said, I'm moving here for the old town quality, so I certainly don't want to see 8-story buildings go up here. I don't know where else I'd move after that, but I just feel like I have seen this happen over and over, and it's easy to ask developers to make something less dense, but then it's not viable. And usually what's happened in those projects in Aspen is the next buyer puts in low density, very expensive housing for wealthy people, and there goes your town. So that's just what I wanted to
Thank you.
Excuse
Comments?
me, ma'am, may I have your name, ma'am?
Yeah, Candace Olson.
Thank you, Candace.
Anyone else? Yes, come on up.
My name is Daylene Barton. I'm the general manager for Skip's Farm to Market. I was the store manager for almost, I think, 3 years. I know some of you from there. And I just wanted to let you guys know that there was an article that came out this morning, and some of the closing statements included some things that I said. But a group of concerned citizens approached us because they didn't want to see us be decimated by a new grocery store. And we still stand by the fact that we're going to expand. Skip owns the Boone property and Skip's Farm to Market, but we are willing to consider moving into your space with this new proposal. And I want everybody to know that, because I think that, you know, I grew up in Eagle and Gypsum. I've seen the growth, and I have lived in Basalt, and you're right, I was one of those families that got pushed out and had to move farther, and I'm now commuting an hour to come to Basalt or an hour to go to Palisade and Fruita to our other store, so that I could have a farm of my own. I think it's important to realize that progress and growth is gonna happen no matter what, and this seems like an opportunity to work together to figure something out that could be different and unique for Basalt. The issue with the 4 stories, yeah, I have concerns about that as well. I've seen Colorado explode. I grew up here. But I think we need to think in terms of progress and how we want things to feel and be energetically, like the man said about the confluence. I don't know if he's still here. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say. You know, we have a model that is attractive to you guys, is attractive to Candace, and we have great connections throughout the valley. Can we scale up to 9,000 square feet? No, there's no way. But with these new ideas, there is a possibility that we could provide what this downtown area needs, in addition to having other things that are gonna make us attractive, as long as we can all just work together to figure out a solution.
Great. Hey, good comments. Thank you. Anyone else want to speak tonight? With that, I'll ask council.
Hold it just a minute, Mayor.
Oh, there are, okay, sure. I didn't see your hand back there.
My name's Valerie Brewington. I live at 628 East Soapers Drive. I've lived in the valley for 44 years or so. Basalt the last 30 years, the address I currently have. I like the fact that we're looking at developing the property over here, but I'm tremendously concerned about the size of it in 4 stories. The traffic I see going on in Willits scares me to death to go down there anymore. It's gotten so big, so huge, the high buildings, the traffic. I don't want to see that happen to this nice little corner spot. I like the idea of apartments you can rent. I do not know the balance of what we have in Willits right now that is rentable, viable, affordable. Also the other developments that we have going on. I'd almost like to see those built out before we start building 4-story buildings over here, but I do know we need to get busy on this area too, so. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Pam, you got?
We have Matt Cunningham still on the list of attendees. He
Gary
did send
made
us
a
an
good point.
email
He
asking
maybe just
to.
listening in.
Yes, he did send an email asking to make comments.
Okay.
So just say
but
it loud.
we seem to be having trouble communicating with him. I didn't know if we wanted to try and call him.
And I couldn't find the email with the phone number.
Yeah. Well, Mac, if you can hear us, unmute.
Flyers
I have
that
a
I sent
feeling-
down earlier.
Here.
Well, it's on the note that I left the mayor. No.
She's got it.
She got it.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, that's
just-
okay. Yeah, I didn't know if I wrote a note on the one that I had, so I put it up at the mayor's.
And it stays there.
I think this is beyond
And
the
also,
Call of Duty.
Raquel, if you are interested in speaking, would you mind
did ask.
raising your hand
Yeah,
on the Zoom?
I don't know why I can't use it. Well, if it goes to voicemail, then you're
Or
done.
maybe fall asleep.
And then Raquel is also interested.
Cunningham, please leave your
Yeah,
name,
you
number,
can-
and message, and I'll return your call promptly. Thank you.
Yeah, we tried.
Record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Next meeting date.
Hi, Mac, I'm sorry it didn't work to make contact with you. It looks like we'll be continuing the public hearing to September 14th, so maybe you can try then. Thank you.
Oh, Mac is now,
On? Okay, no?
is now into the,
Okay.
Raquel.
Raquel,
yes, Raquel is, yeah. Oops. There she is. Okay.
So Raquel, are you, you are muted. Do you want to address council? We see your name on the board here.
Yes, there she goes.
Good morning, or good afternoon,
Let's go for a full name.
or good evening, actually, I should say. I just want to point out that, yes, this is just a great idea for Basalt. I grew up in Basalt. I went from elementary school all the way to high school. It's, for me, a small town. I've always loved the small concept town. For me, I agree with Gonzalo. I live in Silt, and that's why I couldn't attend your meeting in person, which I would have loved to. Mainly because, you can't really afford housing up valley. And I drive at least 5 to 6 days a week, to Basalt. And the idea is, it's great. It's a great idea. We are busy. I know that we need to maybe improve this heart of Basalt. I do see it as, something in the future, and I am, willing to be part of it. At this moment, it's all up in the air, and I know I've been talking to Andrew, and at this moment, I just think it's a great idea, and I honestly, I'm just going with the flow right now. I hope next meeting I can meet with you in person. And that's all I have to say as of right now.
Thank you very much.
Raquel, may I have your last name, please?
Alvarado.
Thank you.
Raquel runs the BLT restaurant. I don't think she said that.
Okay, great. Susan?
Oh, I was just gonna say, before we close the public hearing, we just want to enter into the record, oh, got one more, okay.
We have more. Erica, if you are interested in speaking, would you raise your hand, please?
She's still connecting.
There she goes, yeah.
You can ask her again, she was still connecting.
Okay. Erica, if you can hear me, can you raise your hand on the Zoom if you're interested in making a comment this evening?
Oh, she left.
She left, okay.
Okay. If there,
Yeah. Oh, yes, I want to enter all the letters that were handed in and the ones that Pam had received during the day and we put out on your table, and I'm officially entering them into the public record.
Okay. So at that point, we will turn to any questions, clarification for counselors of the applicant or staff before we deliberate. Okay, Gary?
I got questions. Hey. So, some of the questions I have are part of my comments, but they're really questions for you of how you came up with certain pieces of the puzzle. Because, when we did the master plan, it was nebulous, and it wasn't necessarily, it said 52 units and 25,000 square feet. So I'd love to hear why you chose 70 units and 9,000 square feet. And then, on that, how do you really expect to park the residents? Because to me, that is, I'm dealing with a lot of things in Aspen that were underparked, and I'm worried about this one, so.
Let's pick those off one at a time. How did we get to the 70 units? The apartments are made up of majority of studio and one-bedroom, small-scale units, and then a small handful, I think 6 or something, of two-bedroom units. So we were shooting for this compact, efficient character in the apartments, which we know is necessary. We did more generously sized units, slightly more, in the Willits project that we recently wrapped up. The density of the building and the parking lot that supports the building, both the commercial and the residential parking demands of the building, balance out at this equation of about 9,000 square feet of commercial and 70 of these types of units, these types of apartment units. The town code and C2 zoning requires parking stipulated on a per square foot basis. So the 9,000 square feet, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's a required amount of parking for that, and we have that covered inside of the homeowner association parking lot. The 70 apartments also have a stipulated amount of parking, 1 per bedroom. So a studio and a 1-bedroom necessitate 1 parking space, and then the 2-bedroom units have 2 parking spaces for them. So that's how it fit together and fit together well enough. We did receive from the homeowner association the ability to utilize 16 parking spaces in the homeowner parking lot strictly for the use of residential. When you have residential parking out in a common parking lot, it can be difficult because if that's your spot and you've come home and somebody's in it, that doesn't work for you if you've got an apartment upstairs. So we do have the green light from the homeowner association to use and sign and specifically manage those 16 parking spaces for the benefit designated apartment users. And those will be off to the outside, which are far enough away from the commercial area. They probably would have been the last ones to be used. So that hits kind of the scale of the project. The 9,000 square feet of commercial is in fact what is called for in the Csc Zone District as a minimum amount of square feet for grocery. That amount of square feet also jives with a market study report that was commissioned by both the town of Basalt and Frank DeVerna, who owns the building over there, that explored, with the help of Associated Grocers, the big conglomerate co-op of grocery stores in the West. Their research group came in from Oregon half dozen years ago. It was when Whole Foods was actually opening, to consider the viability of a 10,000 square foot grocery store in downtown Basalt, and it passed, obviously, passed above the level of the predicted volumes of sales that would have above the national average, if you will. And so that is very relevant information in terms of how to scale the grocery store. Also, Gary, when you get down to a smaller scale, like about half of this, kind of a 3,000 or 4,000 square foot grocery store, it's no longer a grocery store, it's really a convenience store, and doesn't have the ability to turn fresh product. It's mainly frozen goods and grab and go that are packaged.
Okay.
I'm
No,
not
that
sure I
guy-
caught
I
everything.
mean, I'm trying to get the thinking behind,
Yeah,
you know, because how you thought about the units drives how'd you get to the fourth story.
sure, sure.
Because the master plan, you know, had all of those options, and I think that's one of the things we're gonna hear, and I'm already hearing
Yeah.
from the public, is gonna be the big sticking point is that fourth story.
Sure.
But I have a feeling there's some reason behind it all.
You bet, plenty of reasons. And also, what we'll begin to show next time we gather is that the site allows a slightly higher building because it's in a depressed area. We talked about the interrelationship of it and its front door and the level that it has relative to the higher area on Two Rivers Road. It's also further away from the street, so when you look at the Skico building, which is 3 stories, but right on the sidewalk, right in front of your nose, this one is 60 feet off of the entry area, so it has a setback effect and a lowering effect because of the site configuration around it. So we feel like that was part of how you fit it. I think the other thing that should be said is the Csc Zone District did indeed allow for a building of this size, both its density and its height. What we have done, again, which you'll see more of next time we get together, is that the building is set back even off of the property boundary lines to further reduce its impact and its presence in the area around it. So those are things that have been done to greatly reduce the perceived size and scale of a building. Yeah.
Good answer.
Bet.
Anyone else? Questions of staff or applicant?
I have,
Maybe,
you got one, go ahead.
I didn't hear this in the presentation, but request to reclaim portion of sales tax. Where are you at on that?
We are asking to reclaim a portion of the sales tax. I think it stands on its own. We were, because we are proposing these small units, there's no larger units that drive sales, that they're high sales per square foot that subsidize the rest of the property. That was the idea with that one. So this is, we're having a locally serving grocery store and a locally serving residential units. And that was the idea with that. Sorry, I'm coughing.
1.5% RETA. I know you said these aren't for sale. I'm guessing you'd try to sell the whole building as a package or sell part of it. So is that's
How does the
only,
RETA work
that's-
relative?
yeah, isn't that only like a one-time or two-time thing in
No,
the
it-
period of the life? I mean, depending on how many times the building sells, right? Because you have to
Sure.
sell the whole building to recoup that RETA.
That's correct. Or any like if we condominiumize the commercial and that's sold separate from the residential, that would be subject to RETA very similar to what we've done in Willits, for example. The apartment building 110 Harris sold the first year that they did it. The affordable housing building you did sold. So you wouldn't have a couple units every year necessarily selling like a condominium building would, but you'd have lumpier, sales like a hotel would.
But they're most likely one-time.
Correct. It's
They're
lumpy.
one-time fees, so you could get maybe for the grocer. You would imagine splitting it in two, so that would almost be two sales, depending on how many times it turns over.
It'd be like a hotel, like when the hotel building sells, then it pays Rita.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And these buildings do sell, as Andrew was pointing out.
Oh, of course.
Over time, industry rule of thumb is that residential properties turn over every 7 years, and that's a similar number. It's more close to 10 in terms of when apartment buildings have transacted. So it's in that realm of, it's just lumpier. It's bigger transactions that do occur, but at Willits, 2 of the 3 apartment buildings have sold.
Once.
Thus far, they're only 3.
Correct, I know.
3 years old and 4 years old.
Yeah.
2 and 4 years old. Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
David? Any prospective operators for the grocery space identified, and you guys have evidence that or some kind of findings that we could support another grocery store in the community? And a staff question I would have, I've seen something in there about CSC code amendments a few times sprinkled throughout. If someone could elaborate on that, what that involves. I understand it has to be done concurrently with the final application if we get to that point.
David, as it relates to the grocery store operators, both over the years of having worked with the property owner and seeking grocery store replacement tenants, looking at new opportunities with the mindset of coming up with a 9,000 or 10,000 square foot grocery store in downtown, we've been in touch with, I would say, every one of the operators in the Roaring Fork Valley and a little bit beyond. And what is nicely happening now is that we are seeing a creative push by some business entrepreneurs who are interested in creating this space and taking it on as also prospects. So we have gone as far as we can with these operators until we know more about what it would be. So it's really been a meeting of the minds with these conversations that we're as far as we can with showing interest both ways, and on this concept that we're talking about. We've also discounted and are not working with certain grocers who would just look at this as boxed goods and in a very generic grocery store in terms of product mix, and not that engagement and experiential retail experience that we're looking for, that we think will be more successful as well. Staff on the CSC?
Yeah, do you want to start, James?
Yeah. The Csc Zone District has requirements related to this parcel specifically about being able to provide pedestrian corridors between Midland Avenue and the river, the Frying Pan River. And, there potentially would be a need as part of the final plan application to look at a code amendment that would basically limit the access through because the applicant in this case doesn't own the property adjacent to Midland Avenue or control it or own the property adjacent to the Frying Pan or control it. So that's the primary code amendment that would have to potentially be considered with this concept and design.
Okay.
Can I put an underline on that question about kind of where are we with operators?
Yeah, please.
Fortunately, I've been able to be involved with the property owner and that commissioned market study report for grocery stores. Do you recall the date on that? It was 2015?
2015 or 16, somewhere in there, yeah.
That was done because we thought we had a grocery store. I mean, we're here today. Our history on that site and soliciting interest and creating a grocery store that would work goes back all of those years. And so this is not just now. I mean, there's that kind of depth behind it and history behind it.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that clarity.
Can I follow up on the grocery?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not, I think calling it a grocery is confusing because what you're proposing is really a shared use space that provides food, wellness, you name it. So, you know, kind of in my mind is, I prefer that model than trying to do just a grocery today, because a 9,000 square foot grocery, I think people just think it's gonna be one. But if you can do, like I've been to the Stanley and other places in Denver and Seattle and stuff, if that's included in the CSC grocery definition, I'm in favor of that, because I just don't, my worry is, and I have other issues, but my worry is you approve this as a grocery and you're not gonna find a tenant. But if you are free to work with a bunch of different, you know, tenants that can do what the grocery does and create that vitality down there, I'd rather, I hope our grocery definition can meet that.
Yeah, you can, between this meeting and next meeting, you can look at your definition of grocery that's in your packet. So we spent quite a bit of time. We're not 100% sure we're there, but that was the idea of allowing the liquor and the food service. So, you know, maybe we'll just emphasize that at the next meeting. You can read that definition.
Okay.
It's in your packet. We can
Yeah,
draw it.
I think there's a good point there, and that is to not overly
understand it.
structure what that current grocery store, the one that's going to work, the one that carries today's vibes, right, and wouldn't have 15, 20 years ago, but is today's version of an experiential boutique artisan grocery store, that definition, we believe it's pretty close, but it does get hung up in the 70-30 and then,
Right.
you know.
I don't understand it.
But I think it's worth some additional attention, because we do hope that it's not overly policed, so to speak, that it's meant to go. But we also appreciate and understand the need for some white lines so that it doesn't flip over and become something that's totally out of line with that use and that need for the community. So we respect the structure that it's providing, but to loosen it up and maybe even provide a little more vision is something that we could do.
So conceptually, it's kind of like a central market in Denver or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if the size is comparable, but that's what.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, one observation, suggestion would be, and I'm sure you're planning this for our next get-together, we should spend some time looking at building renderings and some of these massing studies, and we should examine some of the drawings, because I think from what I saw, there are some interesting elements that do pretty well disguise some of the mass of the building. You know, it always struck me as kind of surprising that somebody said, well, we don't have a 4-story building in town. Well, that may be true, but we have a 5-story building in town that's over by Csc's.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot going for it in terms of disguising its mass. First of all, it's up against the mountain, so that really helps a lot. But, you know, I would just, as to the applicant, I would advise you to, you know, work on that and let us see what this thing really looks like, because, you know, 4 stories sounds like it's a real sticking point for a lot of people, so.
I'm gonna ask you one more for the next meeting, is to really, we need to understand, it's like, you call these small units and they'll be affordable. I see small units in Willits and they're not affordable. So if you can give us kind of a market analysis, a little bit of going, what do you think these are gonna rent for? And just a little, you don't have to stick to it, but I just, you know, the biggest concern I have is that, you know, it might be small, but still, if they go for the same square foot cost as some things are going for, they're not. I mean, those studios in Willits are not cheap. And so how is this gonna be different, and why? And because, you know, I'll just say it, I'm more into trying to find a way to make this much more affordable than what I think it's gonna be.
Other comments, Ryan?
You want to go for it?
If you're following up on that question,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd kind of agree with him, just because I live in Valley Pines. We have 1-bedrooms. They're $1,800 a month. It's not really that cheap. And secondly, on the parking, Valley Pines was envisioned the same idea. You're not going to have, you're gonna have old people living there, so they're not gonna have multiple vehicles. Well, it didn't work. So let's not create a problem. You know, we already know that typically doesn't happen.
Yeah, I had a question. On the parking, I guess, how many spots are there currently? Do you have?
I mean,
them?
in the entire HOA?
Well, yeah, obviously not the entire, yeah, it gets, but, you know, I couldn't count on it.
That map that we showed that includes all the way up to Encore Logos Gallery and the
How about
office
just
spaces
your
up there
side,
down
sorry.
through.
Mostly like what you're talking about developing.
Let me get grounded at least with that one, because that's a number that we do know, and that's, I
Okay.
think, 196 parking spaces.
Okay.
So then you start reducing those that kind of logically go with those businesses out there on that north-south area, and then you come toward the motel, the lodge, and the other area, and there's probably, just kind of guessing, Ryan, but probably 50 or 60.
We'll stick with the 196 number. What would your proposal as proposed, besides I think it's the 62 units that you have under the building, how many more would you be able to squeeze out of?
Out of the existing parking lot?
Yeah, do you have?
You know, we were able to look at some improvement. It's something on the nature of a half dozen. It wasn't drastic, or we didn't want to get too far into that without getting a little further on conceptually. But if you add the 190 and you add the 62, you know, we're up hovering around 260 in terms of kind of what that area becomes as compared to the 190 some that it is today.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate all the talk of vitality. I mean, that's when I ran, that's all we were talking about. And I think a lot of people that I've talked to have the vitality they want. That's not to say that we don't need, you guys are fitting an amazing need. I love the European market style, and obviously we do need housing. But the pitch for vitality is, I mean, I drove some people through town today, and they laughed and said, well, where do we park? And I said, well, that's your problem.
That's the 100 days a year right there. The rest of the year, it gets pretty sleepy, and I have really been introduced to downtown a lot these days because I've officed out at Willits for years, and I'm there on a day-to-day basis, and I come downtown, and right now, absolutely, they're very close. There's a lot of vibrancy. People are riding the bikes and walking in and looking for parking spaces in both areas. But what changes is downtown goes to sleep somewhere October 1st-ish, and it's dramatically different. And I was really shocked when I began to come downtown and realized what was happening, as I had just been at Willits in October, or those off-season months, and then come downtown and realize it's just too quiet. And so there is, from a merchant's perspective, a grocery store operator's perspective, maybe even the existing restaurants and the group that they're down here in downtown, it's not 12 months a year of what you're describing or what we're feeling as of, you know, August 24th. So I really do think people can digest that if they think about the year-round component. But we also have people that have challenged us who are here seasonally, and they think it's plenty busy, and Basalt's got plenty of vibrancy. But they aren't here. We are the rest of those months.
And I think the last comment I'd add is that we've looked at if you left everything the same and re-tenant the building, what's the parking demand outside the building footprint of that versus what's the parking demand outside the building footprint of what we're proposing? And it goes down, is it 39 spaces? I mean, it's significant if on the parking calculations for commercial space based upon the existing what's there now, we're actually freeing up 39 spaces from the surrounding spots. So we thought that was important, and that's why the HOA, I think, was supportive of us.
Anyone else?
And then the last thing was just I saw in here, at some point, you're gonna have to do a traffic study. Have you guys started that, or is that kind of waiting till we get further down the line?
It's in the wings.
Okay.
Okay, I think we've reached a point where I think we need some more time, obviously, to process all this, and need to look at design, have a conversation about design and some of the building character stuff. So we've got a lot to talk about. So anyone want to make a motion to continue this till,
I'll make a motion to continue this to September 14th and continue the public hearing.
Second.
David gets it.
been moved and seconded? That was the quickest second I ever heard. That was almost like a part of the same sentence. So,
Thank you.
do we want a roll call on this, Jeff?
We got a motion in a second.
We do not have a vote yet.
We have not had the vote.
Do you want a roll call?
Can we do
on
this by roll call or voice vote? What's the call, Mr. Lawyer?
Go ahead and take a roll call, Pam.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's begin with David Knight.
Yes.
Thank you. Gary Tenenbaum?
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Slack?
Yes.
Thank you. Glenn Drummond?
Yes.
Thank you. And who am I missing? Bill Kane?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you.
Your name is separated from
Thank you,
the
guys.
others, that's why I do that.
Thanks a lot.
Guys,
Thank you.
appreciate
Motion
it.
carries.
Appreciate the background. That was good. CMC has a spot for a history instructor. So, next order of business is item 7B. This is a resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, referring to the eligible electors of the town of Basalt at the coordinated election to be held on November 2, 2021, a ballot issue regarding debt authorization and extension of existing property tax for Basalt Forward 2030 projects. Ryan and Jeff.
All right, thank you.
This capital program really drew them out tonight.
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'll kick this off, and then I'll let Jeff talk a little bit about the language that we had come up with. But in your packet, we did include two options for the preferred language that would be adopted by resolution this evening. Last night, we did have a council work session and got direction from this council to provide the language for option 2, which contemplates 3 different projects. Those are green projects, affordable housing, and the Midland Avenue streetscape and associated infrastructure project. And the total amount for those would be up to $18 million and would be repaid through an annual payment of $950,000 for 25 years to pay those bonds off.
Okay. So, maybe for public information, we have, as a council, had an opportunity to spend a fair amount of time examining options and looking at financing options and the list of priorities that should be addressed. So, I think we, if we're going to take action here relatively quickly tonight, you should understand that there were lots of hours of poring over options, lots of attendance at open houses, looking at questionnaires, working with our consultants. So this comes as the result of a fair amount of effort and a very careful consideration of options. So does any council questions of staff about the ballot language? Jeff?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add a couple of things. In those work session discussions, there was comment about rephrasing some of the ballot language, and I just wanted to follow up on those changes. So there was the phrase "one or more," which would have implied that perhaps not all of these projects would be completed. So that's been removed from the ballot question. There was also a request for more detail and clarity on the affordable housing question. So we took a look at some of the other affordable housing ballot questions that have been put out in Breckenridge recently, and kind of did incorporated some concepts from that question that were consistent with what the projects we've which the town has put forward as part of this review. And so hopefully that is a bit more clear in the ballot question and more descriptive. And then lastly, just from a process standpoint, if this resolution is approved, it'd be submitted to the Picken clerk and the Eagle County clerk to then be placed on the fall ballot for the November 2 coordinated election. And that's really all I have.
Great. Okay. Any discussion, questions, comment?
Sorry, one more thing. Again, there's 2 alternative resolutions in your packet. The resolution that's labeled option number 2 is the one that includes the Midland Streetscape projects as opposed to the Town Hall project.
Right. Should we reference that in the motion?
Yep, so if it would, resolution number 40, series of 2021, labeled option 2 in the packet.
I think it's 39.
39.
I'm sorry, I looked at the following one, 39.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt resolution number 39, option 2, series of 2021 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. This is going to require a roll call.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's begin with Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you, Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill Kane.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, David Knight.
Yes.
Thank you, and Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
And
Thank you all.
staff for, staff and whoever else is online.
Thanks, and I just wanted to make mention that, we had, as the mayor had indicated, a lot of hours poured into this over the summer months and before. In particular, we had our Capital Needs Committee, sorry, it's late, our Capital Needs Committee that sat through 8 meetings this summer, and they were all volunteer. Those were all over 2 hours each, and so we had a lot of really good input from them. So it wasn't, didn't want to pass over recognizing them for their efforts.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, no, thanks to the staff too for teeing this up for us. It's it was a huge effort, and hopefully we'll be successful in getting our citizenry to agree with us. So thanks for that. And so we move on to item 7C, resolution number 40, series of 2021, resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, accepting the dedication of right-of-way on Willets Lane as part of the 10-acre PUD approved by Eagle County. James?
Yeah, thank you. This item is a resolution that would approve of the dedication and acceptance of the dedication of right-of-way, a strip of right-of-way on the west side of Willets Lane. As you can see here, the strip that we're talking about is as part of the 10-acre PUD that was approved in Eagle County for some single-family lots. And it was recognized during that review with Eagle County that there is a call for improvements in the future here, potentially for additional improvements related to Willets Lane. Here's the strip of right-of-way that was proposed to be dedicated and required actually by the Eagle County approvals. The thought is that in the future there might be a need for additional bike lane or something of that nature along Willets Lane. Those types of improvements are called for in the Mid-Valley Trails Plan that was adopted by Eagle County and that the town had provided information and comments on and supported. The town needs to accept the dedication by resolution, so we've got a proposed resolution that would do that. Staff recommends approval of the resolution accepting the right-of-way. We do have Brian Rose here this evening, who was the applicant on the 10-acre PUD. And once again, the dedication was a requirement of the Eagle County approvals as well.
Did we ask for that?
We did.
Okay. I was just making sure. We got what we asked for.
Yeah, and the town owns the Willets Lane right-of-way, so it made sense to have it dedicated to the town instead of Eagle County.
Okay.
Beware of gifts, right, Gary?
What?
Beware of gifts.
Well, no, I just wonder, I remember doing, there was something that we commented on it, so.
Yeah, we did ask for it.
Okay, questions, guys? Any discussion? Motion?
Mayor, I move the town council adopt resolution number 40, series of 2021 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. So we can do this by voice vote, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adoption of resolution number 40, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Brian, you were very convincing. Thank you.
Fortunately, he lives up the street, so.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're on to 7D, public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 11, series of 2021. Ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, repealing and replacing Chapter 8, Article 1 of the Municipal Code to adopt the 2020 Model Traffic Code with amendments. Chief Knott is here.
Evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is a second reading of the ordinance that was presented to you 2 meetings ago. There's been no revisions to that ordinance that was presented at that meeting, and so we're looking for approval on second reading.
Yep. Comments, questions?
This is a public hearing, so we will.
Second reading, so we will open if there are no comments or questions, we'll open it for public comment. No public comment from the audience or any, do you want to take
No,
over?
just a second, that we don't have anybody in the queue, and if you want to speak, I think we've made enough announcements of how to attend the meeting, but as you text 970-379-1514, immediately, if you want to speak, that would be great. Maybe we wait just a little bit for the TV to catch up. I got a text, but it was from someone else.
What did it say? I'm just kidding.
Entertain us.
I know, I don't know that I wanted to know.
I was like, she was gonna say it.
Everybody text Susan right now.
I know, that's the trouble, now I know he's out there, so I think we're okay.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed. Are there comments from council? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 11, series of 2021 on second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying, or can we do, yeah, we can do this by voice. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moves us to item 7E, public hearing, second reading of ordinance number 12, series of 2021, an ordinance of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, amending the town's schedule of fines, penalties, and administrative fees related to traffic violations and municipal fees. Chief?
Thank you. So much like the last one, I was before you at your last meeting to adopt upon first reading the ordinance for these revisions. There's been no changes to those, so we're here for second reading.
Thank you.
So we can open the public hearing?
Sure. Well, it's hard to imagine there being any public from the audience, but we'll wait to see if there are any
Yep.
call-ins.
Don't do it
And
again.
since we haven't had anybody else identify that they wanted to speak, I think we can close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you. With that, the public hearing is closed, and I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 12, series of 2021 on second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? We're moving right along. We're on to item number 7F.
Nice, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Glad you waited.
So this is public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 13, series of 2021, an ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the 2021 budget and providing for a supplemental appropriation related to Public Works Facility Phase 1 project, Swinging Bridge Waterline project, Two Rivers Road project, Basalt Forward 2030, and Public Works improvements. Christie?
Thank you, Mayor. we already reviewed this in detail at the last meeting. The only change that we had, as I mentioned in the last meeting, is that we didn't know exactly at that time how we were going to fund the $141,000 for Basalt River Park for the water line, and it was determined that it was better not to use the federal funding because of the developer partnership and some of the question around that, with that particular way that's approached. So what we decided to do, as discussed in the last meeting, is take the $82,000 from the other water fund projects and defer those to the future, and then $59,000 from the general fund using sales tax monies and transferring that to the water fund. So I reflected that in the final ordinance exhibit.
All right, questions, comments? I'd appreciate a motion. What's the public hearing?
Public hearing now.
Yeah, so,
Can I ask one question?
beg your pardon?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
Given your comment earlier when we reviewed the second quarter finances about the water fund, are we comfortable with that?
We're deferring the projects. I don't know if we have another good alternative besides utilizing the general fund monies. First of all, and second of all, I don't believe that the $82,000 is going to make that huge of an impact on the water fund to really cause an issue into the future. It's something that we're gonna need to note because we've got a lot of CIP projects that are coming up on the water fund that we're gonna have a bigger conversation, I think.
Right, okay.
How's the second half looking? Do we think we're gonna be in better shape?
Third quarter is always the highest bill.
Yeah.
That's not, yeah.
You watering your lawn?
Listen,
Few of
my
those
wife
checks.
doesn't have a garden, okay? Not my fault.
Do you want me to answer, or is that, okay? I think the third quarter is, we're gonna be, from everything I could see, we're gonna be in good shape. I mean, we've got inflationary pressures on our, CIP projects, and we've got, additional sales tax revenue. So we've got both, but I don't think that there's anything negative.
For the water.
Oh, for the water. Oh, thank you. I don't see there are not any emergency projects or anything that I know of right now. We just have to watch to see what the third quarter utility bill is gonna come in at.
Okay, so we'll make this available to the public. If there's public out there watching, would like to call in and comment on our ordinance number 13, supplemental appropriation.
I don't think we have anyone.
All right, with
Mr.
that, we will,
I don't think you actually opened it, because I think Elise
Sorry,
did
I
ask
cut
the
you
question,
off.
so just for,
we will open the public hearing
thanks.
and make it available for anyone that would like to call in and comment on ordinance number 13.
Bruce Kimmel.
Bruce is here.
Bruce, you're a little late. You would make a comment on this?
Pocket dial.
Okay.
He's gonna complain about his water bill.
It's 10:41.
He might be offering good services. I can help you.
He was gonna
Right.
help on the last one, and we wrapped up pretty quick on that one, so.
Yeah. Hearing no comment, we'll close the public hearing and I would entertain a motion to approve ordinance 13.
Mayor, I move that town council adopt ordinance number 13, series of 2021 on second reading.
Second.
Okay.
And Pam, if we could take
Please.
a roll call on this.
Okay.
I love hearing myself, but.
So it's been moved and seconded. This will require a roll call vote,
Perfectly dead, Pat.
so.
Correct.
Same tone. Perfect.
Okay, let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill Kane.
Yes.
Thank you, David Knight.
Yes.
Thank you, Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Thank you, Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you, and Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you, guys. That concludes our business tonight. There's a famous old song called "See You in September," right? So, see you guys. Thanks a lot, and have fun out there.